Tuesday, and the Wise Guys are back. The best day of the week is here. Dave McCann, Blaine Fowler, live from Provo, Utah, at our undisclosed location for security reasons.
Yes.
Thank you for being with us. Yeah, we need a lot. We need psychiatric help.
Lately, we need security.
We got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. We're gonna have some great guests, and if you're just dialing in and this is the podcast and you're listening later in the week, welcome. Thank you for listening to us, and we hope to be able to get you through the day. Sometimes this is group therapy. This is the third week of group therapy as BYU has lost 3 in a row.
And Tuesdays, we get to be together a lot of the day on Tuesdays. Yeah. So by the time we get to this part of the day, we're already off the ledge. So once we get off the ledge, then we can help you get off the ledge. And
because it's tough. It's tough to help someone up when you're also down on the ledge.
Yeah, right. So you can't help someone up unless you're on stable ground yourself. So we have to get that going first. And when they win 3 in a row, we're here on Tuesday night. By the time we get to this point, we've thought through it, and we realize they're not quite as good as we thought they were. And so our job is to have a leveling effect on everything.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. We're going to talk you through it. Before the show's over, you're going to go, get me to Friday night. Let's go. Right. We got another football game. It's cold outside. It was raining and a little bit of snow today here in Provo, and we're going to have about 55 for a high on Friday with some sunshine, but that game doesn't start till 6. It's going to be a chilly second half and a very cold post-game show on BYU TV.
Well, and everybody knows about this crazy stat on BYU on night games versus day games. Yeah. Like, thank goodness they're playing at night again.
And Vegas, by the way, knows this very much.
They know this also. They're like, they know this. Yeah, for some reason, BYU doesn't lose in games that start at 6 p.m. or later.
I made a note here. Since 2019, they're 21-3 in games that start after 6.
But what happens?
And then it's a little better.
What happens in afternoon games?
Not so much.
Yeah. They're like 7-13.
Why is that? Did you play in very many night games, or most of them in the day?
We played mostly day games back in those days, and so we won most of the time.
You know what?
It's interesting. Like, we say, we won most of the time. First of all, we didn't play the kind of schedules these guys play.
Yeah.
And we were really, really good. But we had a couple of years, like we had 1982. I was on the 82 squad. We weren't great. We lost a bunch of games that year.
8-4, right?
For BYU standards. And just let me say, an 8-4 team with that schedule, last year's schedule, this year's schedule would have been lucky to be 6-6 and get to a bowl game with this year's schedule. So we go 8-4 against, we only had to get up for 2 or 3 games a year and played some really, really bad teams. So, yeah, I know what it's like to be on a team that's struggled a little bit.
Hey, Outlaw Bandit, hang in there. I know it's been a tough 3-game skid.
Wait, what's Outlaw Bandit saying?
He's right there on the edge. It's just to put the sharp objects down, back away from the ledge, and listen to this show, and we'll get you ready for Friday. And no, they're not going to give up 2,000 yards on Friday. They might give up a few.
He's talking about in the last 3 games. So,
and
here's the other thing. We'll call it like it is too. And everybody keeps asking me, what's wrong with the defense? And I watch every single play of every game on film, so above you. And the offense isn't helping them either. Not that makes you feel any better, but I promise you the defense wasn't that bad against Notre Dame. The offense struggled against Notre Dame. The defense was horrific against Arkansas, and the offense was okay.
A little bit better
against Arkansas, but didn't help them out. And then both sides of the ball were not good last week. And I am going to put a 50-50. Defense is really obvious because you go and look at the points. But when your offense has one drive in the entire game, they went down and scored a touchdown. Then they had an easy touchdown because BYU got an interception and gave them a 27-yard field. And then they never scored again. Not only did they not score, they just kept going. A minute and 6 seconds, give the ball back. A minute and 13 seconds, give the ball back.
It's crazy.
And people are going, well, the defense couldn't get off the field. That's why the offense couldn't score. Hey, got news for you guys. The offense had just as many possessions as the other team.
There you go.
So was the defense awful? Yes.
Yeah.
But the offense...
The offense was worse.
And you help the defense out when you go out and possess the ball a little bit, and they can, after they've just defended an 11-play, 5.5-minute drive... the worst thing you can do is go out there and throw a pick on the first play. They didn't do that last week. They did it the week before. Or go out there and have a 3-and-out that takes 1 minute and 6 seconds and put the D right back out on the field.
Yeah.
And then guess what happens when that happens? Then they get another 11-play drive. But if your offense goes out and they hold the ball for 5 minutes, even if they don't score, say they get 4 or 5 first downs and that defense regroups, then that defense goes out and has a much better chance to maybe get a stop. But if you're doing nothing on offense, your defense has no chance.
We've got the perfect guest for tonight's show.
Yes.
Brandon Doman's back with us here in just a few minutes. He played with an injured shoulder during that 12-2 season. Jaron Hall's got an injured shoulder. We're just not sure to what extent. But we're going to ask Brandon what it's like to play through that kind of stuff. Right. How you can make throws. Can you make throws? Is it not bad enough to get you out of the game, but not good enough for you to excel in the game? Because no kid wants to come out.
Right.
Doman didn't want to come out of a game.
No, and Brandon also has a unique experience where he played on some teams that won a bunch of games. He played on a team that came out of the gates and won 12 straight, but he also played on a team that had to win their final game to even get to 500.
Yeah.
Right? So he knows what it's like when you're struggling a little bit. It'll be interesting to have him talk about how you get over that and get back on the winning track. We also have Steve Cleveland with us tonight. Yeah. And Cleve took over a BYU program that they weren't familiar with winning.
No, they were 1-25.
They weren't familiar with winning. I'm really interested to talk to Cleve, our good friend, about how you change that mentality. Now, BYU's certainly not. BYU's got a bunch of kids and coaches in this program that, were 11-1 2 years ago and 10-3 last year and have won more games against P5s than any 2-year span in the history of. In fact, they probably won more P5s than any single player in their entire careers combined have won at BYU,
yeah,
right?
For sure.
So these guys know how to win, but I'm interested to ask Cleve, when you get in a 3-game slide like this and things seem to be going wrong, what do you do? What are the things like? What would he do as a coach? And he's had to do this, so it'd be really interesting to see.
Hey, and this is cool because the seasons are about to converge for us. Tomorrow night we're on the mic on the BYU TV app for the Blue-White game.
Yes.
For the basketball team. So Coach Cleve is on tonight on the eve of that.
Such fun guest tonight. I think really timely that can help us all put things in perspective. Outlaw's he's on the ledge. Outlaw. We got to get you back.
Come on,
the guys
buddy.
on defense were so bad, Corner Canyon could have beat BYU.
That's not true.
It's not true. BYU would beat Corner Canyon by 100. It's like people say to me, "Oh, Alabama's so good they could beat." I don't know who's the worst team in the NFL. I don't even know
it used to be the Jets always, but now it's not.
I can't say that anymore. Right?
Gosh, I'm not sure who the worst team is.
But let's say in the old days, the Jets. Alabama could beat the Jets. I got news for you. The Jets in the bad days would beat Alabama by 50.
Yeah.
The jump in level is so ridiculous because everybody on the worst team in the NFL are the best players from all the teams like Alabama and Ohio State. It's not close. And the jump from high school to college is not close.
So we've got a couple of minutes before Brandon. Let's take care of some business here, and then we'll get to some headlines. So follow us on YouTube tonight. We put a link in the chat. Hit the subscribe button. That's free. And then click on the bell, and then you'll get notifications when we post something new or go live like we are right now.
Yeah.
More subscribers we get, the longer we get to do the show. So get your friends on there, too.
What's nice is you'll get a little notification. And we post a bunch of highlights, little snippets of the fun parts of interviews and stuff. So then you'll know they're there and know that they're for you to go take a look at.
I got the highlights the other day, and I was listening to them, and I'm like, that's a great show. And I'm like, that's our show. That's what our show is. You get the highlight clips.
That's right.
Sometimes we don't have 2 hours to the podcast is different, but tonight is Tuesday night. Things are busy, but we'll slice it up.
It doesn't cost you anything to follow us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitch. It's a free account. So what you do is you click on the chat button in the lower right of the screen and sign up for free and follow us. You can do it that way. Or follow us on wiseguys.com, ysguys.com, and subscribe. And if you subscribe, you get our weekly email with highlights from the show. It just comes to you, so you can just click on the links on that. It makes it really easy. So we'd like you to just be on here with us live as much as you can, or watch it in its entirety on whatever format, or listen to the podcast. But it's nice to kind of get that link to some highlights and be able to just listen to the highlights if you want to.
And things are happening for this show. There's some exciting things coming, and we want you to be a part of it. And we certainly thank you for giving us some of your time this week. A lot of things going on. Let's jump into the headlines. BYU's back home Friday night against East Carolina. BYU Sports Nation Game Day. DJ, can we pop that up? Begins at 6 Eastern, 4 Mountain on BYU TV. There's the gang. We'll be live from Cougar Canyon outside Lavelle Edwards Stadium. Basketball coach Mark Pope's going to join us live on set. I sit down with Tyler Batty to talk about the defense. And Isaac Rex is in the film room, all leading up to the Cougs and Pirates.
Yeah, kickoff is at 8 Eastern. 6 Mountain Time. It's going to be on ESPN2. Big game in town on Friday night across the country, which is fun. The live post-game show going to be back on BYU TV. As soon as that game's over, come back and join us. So we'll get you to the game, take you for 2 hours to the game. Then you go over to ESPN2, you watch the game, and then you come back to us, and we'll get you out of the game. And hopefully it's a little more fun than our post-game show last week.
Yeah, I know there'll be 29 degrees during our post-game show on Friday night. Just the third meeting between these two. Each team has a win at home. BYU won it in 2016. We were on the call for that one, 45-38. And then they went to Greenville in 2017, and the Pirates beat them 33-17. But weather in Greenville, North Carolina this time of year is different than out here in the West.
It's a challenge. There's a reason BYU wins at night, especially at home. But so the weather report for this Friday here, sunny, high of about 54 in the day. So that, no peak, around 3 o'clock? Is that what we're doing in terms of peak right now?
I'm hoping it peaks when we're on the air.
But a low of 27, right?
Yeah.
We're supposed to get a little bit of snow tomorrow. So they're going to come in. They're going to see snow on the top of the mountains. That's just going to make them cold to just look at that.
Yeah, just seeing that.
They're going to come 2 time zones west. They're going to play at night. So they're going to start the game at 8 o'clock, 8:15, their body clock time. Game will be over at after 11 p.m., their body clock. It's going to be cold by the time they're done playing, and they're going to play at elevation. They're from sea level. They're almost at sea level. I'm telling you, that's a tall task. BYU's had struggles going across country and playing on the East Coast when they go 2 time zones, and teams have difficult time when they do the opposite, and they come, especially playing at night, in that environment with those fans. And East Carolina doesn't see a student section like the Rock going nuts and causing them to have false starts and all that. So there's a lot of things about the environment and the game time and all of that that's an advantage to BYU.
So if the Rock is the 12th man, Old Man Winter could be the 13th man, and 13 guys can beat 11.
Yes,
out there on the football field.
For sure.
White helmets, royal tops, white bottoms, royal trim, old school.
Very, very
for
traditional.
BYU.
And then BYU's favorite, as you mentioned, a 3-point favorite in Vegas. That's for the home field and all of that. If you look at the RPI or the rankings, all the different formulas, East Carolina's slightly ahead of BYU. And it's based on what's happened the last couple of weeks. So which BYU shows up? Is it the BYU that played in the first 3 games of the year, or is it the BYU that played these last 3? So,
well, the record is 5-3 for the Pirates. They beat Central Florida Saturday and looked good doing it, 34-13. They remind me, they got a little bit of Arkansas in them. They have a little bit of Liberty in them. I think starting with that quarterback. Yeah,
I think Liberty is maybe a little bit better defensively as a unit. They just seem like they're just more assignment sound and a little more. I just feel like it's a little better defensive team. But I think East Carolina is very skilled offensively, veteran quarterback, and they run a lot of the same kinds of things where they run this run-pass option where the quarterback rides the back, makes reads, they play action off of that. He can pull it and keep it himself. He can give it to the back. A little different. The back's small, quick type of guys. The receivers are small, quick guys in the slot. BYU's got to play great on the edge in this game, Dave, because they'll hand the ball off inside, and their leading rusher likes to bounce the ball to the outside.
The edge hasn't been a good place for us.
No, and BYU has to do so much better on the edge if they're going to have a chance. They've got to be really, really solid out there.
So the Pirates have wins over Central Florida, Old Dominion, Campbell, South Florida, and Memphis in 4 overtimes. None of those guys are going to jump off the page, except Central Florida was 5-1 before they got beat.
The eye-popping one was Central Florida. I was like, East Carolina, they're okay. Then I watched them this last week, and I went, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah. Central Florida's been very good this year, and they literally gave them all they could handle.
So they have losses to North Carolina State when the Wolfpack were number 13. They're still ranked. That was 21-20. They had a shot in that game, and then got beat by Navy, which is a surprise. And then Tulane's in the top 25 now, so that's
Tulane's a good football team. And this quarterback, Holton Allers, he's going to remind you a little bit of Arkansas's quarterback. He's big guy.
Yeah.
He's 6'4" and 230 pounds. When he runs, he just lowers his shoulder and runs over. He's not sliding and getting down and getting out of bounds. He's a big dude that doesn't mind colliding with people.
So you should be able to find him, but you got to bring him down.
And he's been really solid. He's a good decision maker.
Yeah.
If you look at his efficiency, 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 2,435 yards. He's really been very, very solid. And he's a senior. He's been around. So a lot more experienced than what we saw at Arkansas or at Liberty in terms of quarterback. Big guy. He's not running away from people with blazing speed. He's just a big guy that's not afraid of contact and not afraid to run the ball and smart.
You know who else ran around and wasn't afraid to get hit? Although he wasn't as big as this guy, is our first guest tonight.
Yes.
Our pleasure to welcome back a man who played quarterback at BYU, coached at BYU with the quarterbacks, and called the plays as offensive coordinator at BYU. That's as BYU as a guy can get, and certainly qualifies him for a return appearance here on the Wise Guys. The great Brandon Doman is here with us. Brandon, you do not need to dress up for us tonight, but we understand that you've got
Brandon,
some church business later this evening.
Are you back as the state? Are you the state president again?
I'm a little embarrassed by it because I was thinking maybe I can get out of this shirt and tie fast enough, but I couldn't get there fast enough.
We thought you coming on our show last time would get you out of this calling, but I see that you're still the stake president.
I'm sure if I do this a couple more times, I'll get released for sure.
Oh my gosh!
Hey, we're just talking about this big quarterback for East Carolina who likes to run around, does the run pass option, which I thought you were spectacular at when you were the starter at BYU. How tough is it for a defense when you've just got enough shiftiness to you to keep them guessing?
That's so hard when you insert an 11th player into all aspects of the offense where he can be a runner. It's changed college football. It's changed football as we know it. The NFL and college football have changed with the ability for a quarterback to be able to pass and run and participate in all aspects of that game. It requires the change up on defense. And in many cases, if the quarterback's good enough, now you're having to insert the 8th man, which is the strong safety into the package for run stop defense. It sure makes it easier to throw it.
And this guy, he reminds me, Brandon, of Arkansas's guy. He's a big dude. He's like 6'3", 230, and he's not blazingly fast, but he turns it up. Safeties come up, and he just runs over the top of them. He's just not. I'm like, wow, this is like a big old guy back there playing. He's a senior and takes care of the ball. That's kind of a special challenge too. And the quarterback's a big guy. We saw against Arkansas. At times, BYU got pass rush there. One play we're thinking of in particular on 3rd and 11. And they come after him, and he just bounces off and gets outside and makes a spectacular play. How do you tackle a guy that big and make sure that you bring him down on the pass rush and not let him bounce out and make big plays after contact?
Well, tackling fundamentals, I think it's really, really tough. Those guys are hard to bring down, period. I mean, look at Allen with
Buffalo
Bills. I mean, they're just hard to tackle because they use their hands well. Their legs are big, but you're having to just have good fundamentals, which requires you to tackle low. I mean, most guys, and tackling low doesn't mean tackling the ankles. You're having to tackle the near hip and do a good job of wrapping up. And BYU struggled with that lately. There's a lot of ankle tackles and a lot of high tackles, and it's just fundamentals have broken down. But that takes time and effort. And you watch the very best football teams in the country at any level, the focus on fundamentals in both blocking and tackling, they're the best in the world at it. And I've heard Coach Sataki talk about it. And he's put a lot of the onus on themselves that the coaching staff needs to do a better job of just focusing on some of those fundamental basics, and tackling is at the core of the success of a defense.
On the offensive side, and we were just talking a moment ago, you're the perfect guy to have on tonight because when you've played quarterback with a healthy shoulder and with a shoulder that was banged up, and yet you still had to play. Before we get to that one, on play calling, because you call the plays as well, when things are in a funk, to quote the head coach, how hard is it to call a game, to just try and take the pressure off of everybody? And it has to be so much more difficult than all the fans think.
It's really hard. I sometimes I think we make it harder than it probably is. I mean, I'm 10 years removed from doing it. I'd probably be a lot better today doing it than I was 10 years ago, just because I realized that I just created more pressure than needed. I would say that for any play caller in those situations, you have to lean on your very best players and make sure that you simplify it, but get those guys the ball. And sometimes it just means the quarterback you just need to simplify down and let him do something that he knows how to do really well, or shakes off some of the cobwebs that he's dealing with. But we also sometimes squeeze and we get conservative. And I just, for myself, I look back at it, I think I just squeeze too hard, and we don't need to squeeze so hard. There's players out there that can make plays. BYU has offensive players that can make plays. So let them make plays, and they'll make those plays.
It's interesting, Brandon. Multiple coaches have this philosophy, but I had a conversation with Andy Reid one time, and we got talking about play calling in critical situations, and he just said, "Oh, I never think about plays. I think about players." Like so it's down there, and it's like, hey, it's 4th and 6, and they've got to get a first down to go down and get the game winner to go to the Super Bowl, and he's not even thinking about what's the best play here. The first thing Andy thinks about is what player needs to have the ball in his hands right now. And then once he makes that decision, then he goes, okay, what are the best 3 plays we have to get that guy the ball? And then they choose the best play, and that's how they go about it. What's your thought on that process?
It's why he's the best. It's why he's the absolute best, because understanding your very best players, the demand to make sure that your very best players are getting access to the football in the most critical situations. And third down is the time. Red zone is the time. Scoring situations and the appropriate times to take shots to those guys. And like I said, BYU's got plenty of guys to make plays, but you got to be smart about when you give them the touches. And that's a really unique challenge as a play caller, but it's not rocket science. And that's why Andy Reid's so good at it. He's making sure that the right guys are on the field at the right time, and that he's targeting them.
How hard is it? And you've been a play caller when you've gone through a bunch of injuries. I don't know what the deal is. We were talking about this earlier today, and I've actually taken a harder look at it than most. BYU seems to have more injuries than any team I know at key positions. And I don't know if it's because missionaries go out for 2 years and come back, and maybe it's I've talked to a bunch of orthopedic surgeons, and you know what my other job is. It's in orthopedic surgery, right? And they, several of them have said, perhaps muscle comes back way faster when you come back off of your mission than tendons and ligaments. They take a long, long time to thicken up and kind of match the muscle strength. And these kids come back, and hey, you can go do a bazillion curls in like 2 months. Your biceps look like Popeye the Sailor Man, but maybe those ligaments and tendons aren't matched up with that. And so I don't know. I think that we need to commission a study to find out what's going on. But so now you're a play caller, and 100% healthy. You haven't had Gunnar Romney and Puka Nacua on the field yet this year, but where they both are 100%. Now we find out that Cody Epps is probably out for an extended period of time.
Chris Brooks
is not going to play this weekend. Chris Brooks missed 2 games ago, came back last game. Miles Davis played the 2 previous games. He was out last week. He might be back this week. Lopini Katoa missed 2 games at running back. And then who am I missing? Their big wide receiver that came and had a great game when Puka was out.
Oh, Chase Roberts.
Yeah, Chase Roberts comes and has a breakout game, and then he misses the next 2 games with the hip flexor. And he came back last week, but probably wasn't 100%. And he's probably back this week 100%. That's just a lot. I just mentioned on offense. And BYU on defense is playing with their 2 starting inside tackles gone. Haven't played for 3 games. They may be missing 3 of their 4 linebackers this week. 3 of their 4 best linebackers this week. And they haven't had their free safety since game 2.
So now go win.
Yeah. So now, how do you call plays with all of that going on?
It's hard. It's hard to find continuity between. So Andy Reid says, I'm thinking about the players, which players should get the ball in these circumstances, and then I try and dial down to the very best play I can find out. I can find, and if you don't have any continuity, you don't know who to even get the ball to. And I've been in that situation where your very best guys are out, or your quarterback's just not playing with very much confidence, or you can't block anybody. Man, it sure puts you in a funk as a play caller. No doubt about it. So it is hard. And and the first thing we want to do is lynch the coaches, and it's a really hard thing. That's why not very many people are doing it. It's hard to do.
What can you do to get a quarterback that's and we recognize Jaron's been struggling with his shoulder. You can tell, right? And he's been a little tentative, maybe because of that, trying to protect a little bit. We've seen him miss a few throws that he never missed for the last year in the first 3 games. How do you get him back performing at a high level with maybe him being a little bit tentative this last week?
I've always believed that these guys need to find simple successes throughout the week that regenerates that confidence for them. I don't know that injury is going to go away the rest of the season. Mine didn't. And once I got that injury, it plagued me the rest of my senior year, and I happened the third game of the season. And so you have to learn how to play with it. You have to learn how to deal with what it is. And they didn't want me to practice. And I just said, no way am I not going to practice. I have to come out on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I need to throw the football around. I need to learn how to deal with this so that I can play confidently. And so I'm hopeful that they're letting him practice and they're making him make all the throws. And I just said, look, if I have to throw a 20-yard comeback on Saturday, I want to throw it on Tuesday. And I know my shoulder's hurting me, but tape it down, and I need to go out there and make it happen. And it generated enough confidence for me when I showed up on Saturday. I was able to do that. And so simple successes throughout the week. And I think when things are really hard, you have to simulate as many of those tough situations you can in practice so that they can get through what's creating those hard things. And if we're having a hard time converting on third down, then man, let's spend some time this week putting our guys in as many third down situations as we can. And even if you have to go ones-on-ones, our best O against our best D and re-assimilate that, because we couldn't convert very well and on both sides. We couldn't stop them. And so one thing that BYU should be focusing on is third downs in practice this week. And sometimes we as coaches make the mistake of focusing on, base plays, first and second down stuff and early in the week. And then we get to third down on midweek Thursdays where we're focusing on that. And that's a huge mistake. They should probably start with that and stay with that all week and then insert their base concepts as they go throughout the week. And I think for Jaron, being able to assimilate that in practice and generate some confidence physically and mentally, and then see the guys that are making the plays, I think can refocus that. The beauty for BYU right now is that they do have their starting quarterback. I appreciate that he's banged up, but so is everybody else. I mean, every quarterback that's starting college football right now in big time football is hurting. So, sometimes you just have to knuckle up and work through it. And in this case, they got their starting quarterback. So Jaron's going to have to buckle down and he can't afford to not be great. He has to be great. As goes the quarterback, so goes the team. And if he's not, healthy enough to play and help him win, then maybe the next guy needs to come on. But he looks like he's physically good enough to go make it happen. And those are hard decisions to make as a quarterback and as a staff to make sure that the quarterback can do it. But Jaron looks plenty healthy enough. He just, hopefully now can generate enough momentum with the players he's got through the week to get there on Saturday and do it.
Former BYU quarterback Brandon Doman on the Wise Guys tonight. So you separated your shoulder down in Vegas. You're ranked 20th in the country. You're going to win your first 12 games of the season. So you managed to win like 9 more games with a separated shoulder, which is phenomenal. But as we watch Hall, and we saw him overthrow targets and struggle with the deep ball, especially against Liberty, how hard is it? Does it hurt to throw a long ball? And his injury probably isn't terribly different than the one you had. You managed through it, and of course you had all the tools around you, and he's got tools around him. Did it hurt to throw the deep ball, and did you steer away from that because of it, or what? How did you manage a shoulder issue and win all those games?
I look back at that experience, and it hurts so bad. And I had Dr. Kimball, and he's still around, but I had George Curtis at the time, and I spent every waking minute with George Curtis. I woke up Sunday morning after I first hurt that shoulder, and I was in tears, and George was looking at me like, Brandon, I know you've spent 3 years trying to get on the field, and I don't know if you can do it. I said, that's not an option. He said, okay, grab this paddle. I gave me a paddle that I tied to my hand, my right hand. And he said, we're going to take you over to the swimming pool and we're going to swim. and I had a separated shoulder, and I just started swimming, and I started doing all sorts of rotational stuff. I put tobacco leaves on my shoulder. And you ask my wife, with newlyweds, I was wearing tobacco leaves at night, trying to get swelling to go down. I did everything I could possibly think of, because I was just no way in the world not going to participate. It just wasn't going to happen. And to the credit of all those people that helped, and mainly George, Dr. Kimball was a huge part of that. They came up with a way to tape my shoulder that I think was new and innovative. They found a way to strap my collarbone down a little bit, and that really helped. If they could secure the collarbone and allow me to be able to do what I needed to do, and and then we tried everything we could think of to numb the pain, to slow the pain down, and then I didn't think a thing about it in the game. We just, whether it was a deep ball or not, you did the best you could, and we didn't modify the game plan at all. So I don't. Max Hall, I watched him go through it. I watched John Beck go through it. And you just got to go play. And I've seen great quarterbacks separate their shoulder and just knuckle down and make it happen. And I think Jaron can do it too.
Didn't you later in that same season, didn't you crack some ribs later on in the season too?
Was that in the Hawaii game?
Because I remember you had the shoulder thing, because we were covering you when you were playing. Like, that's how old Dave and I are. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, the shoulder's not enough. Why don't we have crack ribs too and have them have to play with that?
That was against Hawaii, wasn't it, when you cracked your ribs?
I was diving into the end zone, and their free safety hit me in the ribs, my left side of my body, and oh man, that was probably the most pain I've been in. And I remember getting on the plane and flying home, and I could not relieve the pain. It was terrible. Yeah. But it is what it is. Like I said, every quarterback that plays, and they play hard and they're laying it out there, Blaine, you're going to get hurt.
So then I'm going to ask you a question we asked you the last time. So we just described what you had to go through to get back on the field with the shoulder, and some of the most excruciating pain you've ever had with ribs. Is it all worth it?
Oh man, you kidding me? I wish
I mean, I know that answer, but I want you to say it.
Oh man, how do you duplicate that for a human? Such a remarkable experience. There's so many there are ways to duplicate those kinds of challenging things, but stretching yourself to the limit physically and emotionally and mentally. But the beauty was for me, and I think as I've watched guys like Max Hall and John and some of these guys go through this, it was more about the team than anything. I wanted to play so bad, but I didn't want to let my guys down. And the whole combination of that, dealing with the adversity and just having to have enough grit. I believe that grit is greatness requires individual toughness. And if you can have a gritty persona and a gritty team, it can overcome so many other issues that you're dealing with. And we just created, when I was playing, we just created a gritty. I looked around that locker room prior to games, and every good player we had, from Ryan Denny to Brett Kiesel to Luke Staley, our tight end, Doug Jolly, every one of them was significantly injured. And we just gritted through it, man. Reno Mahe was having appendix issues and broken toe issues before the season. And you got to figure it out. And I don't know today. I mean, we do have a lot of guys missing games. And who am I to say that maybe they're not gritty enough? I'm not going to suggest that, but we didn't miss practices. We didn't miss games.
You ran the option, which is always the option of the quarterback getting decked with a separated shoulder. So that's next level stuff. But you were smart too. You got the ball out quick to Staley. You got the ball out quick to Mahe, quick to Rigel and those guys. Going into Friday night, how important is Puka Nacua for Jaron Hall if he's not 100% healthy, which he's probably not going to be the rest of the season? We don't know. But how about the guys around Hall, and starting with Puka, how important is Puka for Friday night?
The year I'm going to reference Austin Collie. We threw him. I can't remember. He broke the record. They knew we were going to throw it to him. We threw it to him anyways, and he made the plays. And I think we targeted him no less than 12 to 15 times a game, period. And they need to do the same thing with Puka. They know it's coming. Targeting him anyways. The Miami Dolphins, they know they're going to throw it to their Tyreek Hill. They know it's coming out, but throw it to him anyway. It's the same thing with what Andy's saying, right? I'm going to give the ball to Kelsey. I don't care if we're throwing it to him. He's going to get no less than 10 touches in this game. And if he can get more, we're going to give him more. And I would say the same thing with Puka. And it will only open up other guys. It's not going to deflate the opportunities. It's only going to open up other opportunities for other guys.
You know, Cody Epps has been a guy that's been, to me, as a freshman, really, really impressive. And I know you've watched him, Brandon. Now we're hearing he's probably not going to play because he got banged up pretty.
He got nailed at the end of that
But
game.
I'm interested in your thoughts on him as a playmaker as just a freshman.
What a fun player to have on the team. I didn't know anything about Cody. My goodness, he's fast, he's quick, he seems like he's tougher than nails. I love everything I've seen about him. So that's, I'm fortunate if he's not participating, playing, but he's a very good player, and I think he's going to be a great player in time.
He's a really interesting guy. I think he's the model for who BYU should be recruiting right now. We've had a lot of exposure to him in recent weeks, and as Brian Logan would say, he's a double minority. He's not LDS. He's African American. So he just embraces it. He loves it. He's an active Christian kid that embraces the honor code and loves being at BYU. And so now you put on top of that how much he performs and what he brings to the field. Man, he's the perfect model for what BYU ought to be bringing in here, don't you think?
Yeah, BYU's got a unique challenge. They're going to have to be extra good at recruiting. It's going to have to take extra time. And, there's going to be guys that teams passed over Cody Epps and they gave BYU a shot at him. How do you find those guys that fit appropriately and have enough talent? And that was a great get. Cody was great. It was a great addition to the team.
East Carolina's Friday night at the stadium. Did you play any Friday night games? Remember?
Oh, yeah.
And what did they do to the week of preparation by having a Friday night game? Did it change dramatically?
It changes your Wednesday practice. Monday and Tuesday are pretty much the same, but your Wednesday becomes a Thursday. So you do have to shorten down the prep portion of that. Thursday is usually what we would call kind of perfect Thursdays, where it was a half, kind of a half padded practice. It was a tapered back length, 48 hours before the game. So Wednesday has to be a dialed in practice. And so the game plan has to shrink a little bit. And you have to be really smart about how you manage, Monday's a little bit of a different Monday. Some coaches never changed Monday because they just needed Monday to get the legs back.
Yeah.
But what can we get done on Monday to prep us for Tuesday? But Tuesday is your work day. And today's the day. They had to get the work in today and then clean it up tomorrow.
Is there an advantage, like on a short week, to be home? BYU's home. East Carolina's got to come 2 time zones from North Carolina and play on a Friday night game. Would you say that's a decided advantage for the home team?
Without question. There's so much that they can do in the film room that they can get an extra walkthrough in. I think between Thursday afternoon and Friday at noon, and even Friday at 2:00, you could get a lot done if you felt like you needed it. And the traveling team doesn't have the ability to do that. They're going to be on a plane for 4 hours, which will eliminate some of that opportunity for them.
Brandon Doman, former quarterback's coach, former offensive coordinator on the Wise Guys tonight. Always good guy. There's no former to the good guy. He's been a good guy the whole time.
I bet he could still play too,
which is awesome.
Like he's a former quarterback, but I think he could still play.
Could you come in and run the option if you had if you had Miles Davis behind you and you had Puka to throw to and that big offensive line? How many plays do you think you could do?
Just give me 1 quarter. That's it. And then I'd have to probably go to the hospital at that point.
But 1 quarter, that's a couple of scoring drives.
Here's the
I'd
thing.
like that one quarter.
The old quarterbacks always like, my boys, Brandon, are always like, Dad, do you want to come play in the Turkey Bowl thing? And I'm like, yeah, if I can be all-time quarterback and there's no rushing. Like, if I can stand back here and just throw, I'll stand back here and throw it all day, but I am not running around because both hamstrings, I won't just pull them; they'll fall off the back of my legs.
Yeah, and then now that affects our job, so you gotta be careful.
Yeah, but I don't do that.
Hey, it's gonna be chilly Friday night. What's the coldest game you ever played in?
Oh man, when it's wet, I'm trying to think back at some of the coldest games I played in.
You don't have a Laramie story or a Logan story?
I was going to say it had to have been Laramie. My senior year. It was brutal. I remember going to bed up there in the hotel room. In the hotel, I'm not even sure.
Is it the truck stop hotel? Was that
it was
the
truck stop?
Outside doors. Outside doors.
I've been there. We've all been there.
And the snow's coming through the bottom of the door, and it's just coming in the room, and you're like, "Are you kidding me? How in the world are we possibly going to play up here?" And everything's blowing sideways. But those are some of the most, some of my fondest memories of the hard things that we went through, and Laramie's absolutely one of them for sure.
The win you had up at the U on Lavelle's final night, that wasn't a warm night either, was it? It was late November.
That was cold, and Utah had put some turf in that year that didn't take.
Oh, that's
so
right.
The whole year their grass was coming out, and by the time we played that last game, we might have been playing on the local dirt field at the park. I mean, it was just terrible.
It's like the Sandlot. It was not good.
It was so bad. It was just a big sandy mess out there, and it was freezing. So it was kind of a double whammy.
Is it a myth that the players are warm because they're out there running around while the rest of us are freezing, or is just everyone freezing, including the quarterback?
They're warm. Once you're on the grass and you're playing and you're running into guys and playing football, you don't recognize the cold unless it's wet. And those guys that are playing December games, like when we played in Memphis for a bowl game, It was so humid. That type of cold is brutal because it goes right through you.
Right.
The cold in Utah is not bad. I never really was that concerned about how cold it was unless it got wet and it was windy, but that doesn't happen very often.
Did you ever do the thing, like this is way after my time, but like Gavin was telling me, oh yeah, the guys put something, they don't wear sleeves, but they put something on their arms that's like icy hot stuff, and then they put something else that's like Vaseline on the top of it. And so it just looks like they're bare armed, but they got a couple of coats of warmth on their arms. I'm like, really? They do that? He goes, yeah, there's something they do. You didn't do that stuff, right?
No, I just give me a long sleeve shirt.
You were good to go, right?
Yeah, I didn't need anything more than that.
How about Luke Staley? Did he need something extra to stay warm? Was he as tough as you? We know Reno needed blankets and foot warmers and.
Yeah, Reno was a little soft for sure. No, I don't think Luke ever wore anything under his pads other than his uniform and his pants. I mean, he was so ripped and so put together that he was like, don't bother me with any of those shirts.
Nothing to slow him down.
Yeah, when these guys were playing, they were down playing San Diego State, and Ted Tollner was the head coach down. You remember that? And Ted and I were standing in the end zone talking, and you guys were warming up. And Luke came by, and Ted goes, I've never seen anything like that. And I go, like what? He goes, you look at that kid's calves right there? I go, oh, Luke Staley's calves? He goes, yeah. He goes, I've never seen anything like that.
I know.
It was crazy. He was a piece of just a specimen, wasn't he?
Yeah, even in the NFL, I didn't see a running back like that. It's too bad he couldn't stay healthy because he was such a unique talent, so rare and unusual.
Was there ever a bigger bummer than you're at Mississippi State, you win the game to get to 12-0, but in that process you lose him to a broken ankle, and you look over and he's out, and he's out for good, and you got to still carry the load. What was that like?
That guy laid it on the line.
Yeah.
I look back at that season and what he was willing to do for the team. I was so grateful for him. Love that guy.
Yeah.
Forever will love him. He gave it his very best until the very last moment, and it impacted his life. But I was just so grateful for him. And it was hard. It was hard to lose him. I think had he stayed healthy, he was the Doak Walker Award winner. We were 12-0 at that moment.
Number 4 or 5, right? Or was it number 6?
I think the Fiesta Bowl takes us. I think with Luke healthy as the Doak Walker Award winner, I think they take us for the game. But the fact that he was injured, I think gave him some ammunition to not take us. But I don't think they'd snub us. I think they would have taken us to the Fiesta Bowl. And if he was healthy going into that last little stretch and had the opportunity of the Fiesta Bowl in front of us, it could have been a really, really special finish.
Yeah.
As a special team, regardless of the finish, but what a great season. It's interesting. BYU's coming off a phenomenal run the last couple of years, 10-3, 11-1. They've beaten more P5 teams in the last 2 years than any of us played in our whole career when we played, right? Over our 4 or 5 year career. And so they're on a really good run. And now they have this little lull here where they lose 3 games, and fans are out of their minds. Like, you can't believe the stuff that gets DM'd to us on Twitter, and like, I'm just like, are you serious right now? They want everybody fired. They, the players, they don't have any heart, and there's no discipline, and there's all this. I'm like, these are the same guys that after they beat Baylor were ranked number 12 in the country, and everybody loved. And so how does this team proceed? Because there's a lot of noise out there. And you've been part of teams. Expectations have always been high here. And you talk about that 12-win start. The previous season, you guys had a struggle for part of the year and had to really grind, to get back to 500 that year. What advice would you give to this group to grind and get out of this? I think it starts with a win Friday night, but what do they have to do to turn it around and block all of that out?
Well, the players have to really rise to the occasion. Those guys in the locker room, the leaders in the locker room, and I think college football, it's more challenging today than ever before to create unity, continuity, leadership, the NIL stuff, the transfer portal stuff. It's just hard to get a group of guys to really rally. But if the players have enough leadership and continuity in there to be able to pull together, they can do a lot. The players can have a major impact on this, and their ability to go out now and blind, drown out the noise and go play. As for coaches, it's tough. You can see the coaches are squeezing right now. My heart goes out to them. You can just see it. You can hear it in their voices. You can see it in their demeanor. And I've been there, and the fact that the fans are unhappy and the expectations are so high, and here we are prepping to go to the Big 12. I mean, we might, I hate to say it, but it might get harder before it gets better.
Oh yeah.
And I hate that might be a reality here, but there's just a lot of squeezing going on. And if the players start going south, it's over. And if the players aren't jumping on board, and they're not rallying, and they start pointing fingers, that they're going home to the house and talking to mom and dad, and everybody's pointing fingers, this could get ugly fast. And I hate that, but there's a high likelihood it could get harder before it gets better. So it'll be interesting to see how the players respond, how the coaches respond to this. And like I said, my hat's off to them because it's hard, and my heart goes out to them because I know that they're in a tough spot.
Well, nobody had to overcome what you guys had to overcome. You had to win the last 2 games so Lavelle didn't go out with a losing season. There's no greater pressure than beating New Mexico, and let alone President Hinckley's at the game, and remind you not to go muff it out there on the field. But we talk about pressure. How about those 2 games? That's pressure.
Oh, so fun. Just so fun. The memories are so awesome, and what an unbelievable. I hope those players recognize the unbelievable opportunity they have. There's so many great universities out there, but for what BYU is and for what they're getting to do, it's just unmatched. It's unmatched in the uniqueness of what it is, and our fans are phenomenal. They're loyal. They do have high expectations, but they I don't blame them for wanting us to be successful, and it's a unique place, and I hope they take advantage of every minute they have, because before you know it, the light in the room shining down on your bald head. And
yeah, you can adjust those lights. Take it from us.
You just, life's different. You move on. I hope that.
The one good thing we're hearing, you talk about leadership, Brandon, and how important it is that the players step up. And we all know it's really important that the good players step up. Like guys that are really good on the field, like it's the best if those are the guys that step up. And we heard some news coming out this week. First of all, Puka's been right out there with the media and with the team saying, hey, I looked at everything that I can do, and I'm challenging everybody on this offense to look at what they individually can do, and we're going to be better this Friday, and we're going to hold each other accountable. I'm going to hold myself accountable. I'm going to hold my entire team accountable. He could say that because he's their best player on offense, right? He gets away with that. And we also heard that Tyler Batty had a similar discussion with the defense earlier this week. And Tyler's a star. That's, a big talent at defensive end. Those two things feel to me like that's the start of what you want to see from this team, right?
Otherwise, it won't happen. If the players don't, if the leaders and the very best players don't choose to put this on their back, on their shoulders, and make it happen, it's near impossible as a play caller to fix it. I mean, you're going to try and call some new plays, but somebody's still got to throw it. Someone's still got to catch it, and execute what you're trying to get done. And if the players choose to make it happen, then your chances are, 15 times better.
I like that 15 times.
Yes, I do too.
We know you have meetings coming up at 7, and we promised to get you off earlier than last time, which we will actually live up to.
We're going to do it
although
right
it's
now.
not a lot earlier. But give us 3 keys for a BYU win Friday night. And next week, Blaine and I will revisit those keys.
Yeah, we're going to revisit the keys.
and we'll talk about you behind your back.
We don't have to do 5 questions with you because we've done that before, and we know your answers.
Yeah.
3 keys.
Yeah, I don't think my answers are going to change. I think I said this word for word last time, but I really believe in this, that their third down conversions are going to be critical, on both sides of the ball. And first downs equal touchdowns, period. And if they have the expectation that touchdowns are going to come some other way, they're wrong. And Liberty proved that enough first downs equaled plenty of touchdowns.
Yeah.
And BYU is going to have to stop third downs, and they're going to have to convert on third downs. And those first downs will ultimately be touchdowns. And then when you get in striking distance, you have got to score. And striking distance is crossing the 50. You cross the 50-yard line, and you got a chance now to march in there. You have got to go get points. And anytime, obviously, you're in the red zone, there's no way in a million, you just can't allow points to not come off the board. I mean, for you to not score points. So BYU's defense has got to, once that ball crosses the 50, they have got to stop them. There needs to be something that takes place to keep those drives from going. And they couldn't do it against the last couple of weeks. So striking distance for the offense, they got to get in the end zone. At BYU, once that opposing team is within striking distance, they've got to stop the third down conversion there and get off the field. If those things can happen, Kalani keeps saying, blocking and tackling, those will be the fundamentals that will allow for it to happen. But those are the real data points that we should watch for, is what's happening on third down, and when they get in striking distance, are they scoring?
One of my great memories of Brandon Doman is in Las Vegas. They're rallying to hold off the Rebels, who are finally playing good enough to beat BYU, but still didn't. You throw to Rigel, and on the very next play, you roll to your left, and then you turn back and roll to your right. Nobody's there, and you go like 25 yards. You get to the 3-yard line, and you put both your hands up in the air. One of those is attached to a separated shoulder. The place goes bananas, and you guys get out of Vegas with a win. And afterwards, as the media went to interview you, you weren't around because you were in the back receiving a priesthood blessing, because that's when word got out that you actually played that game with a separated shoulder. That's amazing stuff. Nice job.
It was such a great time. President Bateman, our president of the school, we went and grabbed my dad and brought my dad in. And the last thing I wanted to do was get on an airplane and fly home, knowing that my shoulder at that point was in bad shape. And it was a grade 3 separation, and I could feel it. I could feel it separated, and I just knew that that was the end of it. But I wasn't willing to accept that, and I just figured I needed a priest's blessing and believed in that. And by danged if they didn't bless me to be able to play, and it worked. So I believe in that. I'm grateful for that. I got my white shirt and my tie on. I'm a believer in that, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Those were maybe the most fond memories, and those intimate moments with my teammates and family, and the sacred time. I'm grateful for it.
Go easy on the kids tonight, all right?
Yes.
It's hard out there. And in case you don't know, if you missed the last time, Brandon's the stake president of the YSA stake here in Utah Valley, and there's thousands of them. And tonight you get to give them some advice and help them through their problems. And there's not a better man to do it than you right now. So we're proud of you.
I appreciate you guys. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. We'll talk to you another time.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Brandon. We appreciate you, brother.
Brandon Doman, outstanding quarterback at BYU, quarterback coach. Who gets to be all three? And offensive coordinator. Just think of the reservoir of stories and experiences. And we really thought he was the perfect guy. And when we booked him to come back on the show, it was a couple of weeks ago. But the way things have evolved to where BYU's got a quarterback that's struggling with some health things while playing. Brandon Doman did that.
Like literally the same injury.
Yeah. BYU's got an offense that's struggling to do that. Brandon Doman did that.
And cracked ribs onto it, too.
And cracked ribs.
So not only did he have the shoulder separation, he also had cracked ribs.
And he faced a lot of pressure and won. Well, and BYU's got pressure on Friday.
And it's interesting because, he brought up Max and John, two of the greats that have ever played that position here. And he talked about their struggles with health and how banged up they were and how how they had to manage through that. And so, yeah, absolutely part of the process. And yeah, college football it's a big, fast, violent sport. And guys, you get to this point in the season, there's a difference between being hurt and being injured. If you're injured, you can't play, right? And they rule you out and say, no, you're not cleared. If you're hurt, well, everybody's hurt at this point. And you just go out and do the best you can, and you manage it. And that's what football's all about. Interesting.
So we've heard from Coach Doman. Now let's hear from Coach Sataki. Here is Kalani's thoughts as game week on a short week kicked off in Provo. This is from his news conference on Monday.
Okay. Well, new week. Obviously, coming to the last third of the season. Excited about the matchup. Excited about being home. Short week, so we're playing the game on Friday. Got to spend some time on corrections, but got to get moving on our opponent with East Carolina coming into town. Really good team, well-coached team, and a lot of good athletes. They can do a lot of things on offense. Defensively, they're tough up front, and so and they're a really good team all over. And so all three phases do a great job. They had, I think, beginning of the year they had a chance to beat NC State, and probably should have had it. They had a field goal to win it. So this is a really good team. Just, I think it comes at a good time for us right now. So they have our attention. We don't really have time to feel sorry for ourselves. Got to get rolling and working hard and show that we can get back to our identity of who we are. So take any questions you guys have.
All right, that's Kalani setting the tone for the week. And Blaine's coming back to the set. You went and got yourself a Diet Coke, but you did not bring me a drink.
Do you want a Diet Coke or Dr. Pepper?
I'll go grab a water or something. DJ, could you get me a water?
DJ will get you one.
I'm glad someone's not thinking about just number one around here. If you're the Cougars,
I need to be a better teammate. I really do.
We just listened to Kalani. He was talking about how he was happy the game is Friday and that they can get right back in it. Some people like to have a bye week, and I would think that it's better to play on Friday than wait it out. This team needs a feel good. And they need to feel good quick.
And there's a couple of things that, first of all, when you haven't played well, you immediately want to get back on the field and rectify that and play well. Even though coaches sometimes know that there's got to be some practice and some corrections made, the players want to get back out and play. And the other thing is that he's so happy to be back home.
Yeah.
Recognizing that home crowd, especially that student section, the ability to have that student section affect the outcome of the game, to play at elevation, to play at night, all of those things are to their advantage. So I think, you can tell in his tone, very excited to get back on the field, excited that it's a Friday night game in Provo. And you also get the sense, as we've seen Kalani this week, without really coming right out and saying it, they're saying the same things Brandon Doman said, that hey, listen, we need to coach these guys up. We're taking responsibility. Yeah. But we also need our guys to step up and take a leadership role. So they're publicly and privately, supporting what Puka Nacua is doing and supporting what Tyler Batty's doing, supporting these guys and taking the leadership role, holding each other accountable. The coaches are going to hold them accountable. But unless the players also hold themselves accountable, it's not as easy as it looks.
Thanks, DJ. You're my new best friend. Blaine and I have been friends. This supplanted Blaine for about 10 minutes. I don't know what this Diet Coke is, but this is awesome.
Wait, you don't drink Diet Coke?
No, I just drink the regular stuff. This, you know what? As
right.
a friend,
I forgot DJ Dave.
As a friend, I'm just going to have this here for you when you're thirsty.
Dave doesn't drink Diet Coke, and you don't drink Diet Dr Pepper either. You drink regular Dr Pepper.
I just do it straight.
Regular
take
Coke.
it on the rocks.
There you go.
Wow. What do you had a 7-Eleven back there, DJ? Thank you. Now that's something. Now Boise State's next.
Right.
And the start time for that hasn't been announced yet. We're going to find out on Sunday. Fox has got that game, which means it can go on Fox or FS1.
Right.
We think in FS1. Boise's 5-2. If BYU can win on Friday, they would be 5-3. They could put that game anywhere.
They just beat Air Force in Colorado Springs, 19-14. So a low-scoring game. Boise's been pretty solid on defense this year. They've won 3 straight games, and so it's kind of like East Carolina comes in here after that Central Florida win, and they're kind of on a roll. They're feeling pretty good about where they sit and the talent they have, and they've kind of found themselves. And I think Boise State, as you mentioned, if they can get a win this weekend, they're gonna come into that game at their place feeling pretty good about where they are. So,
and if BYU wins, they'll be 5-4. Sorry, I said 5-3.
Yeah, there's no easy ones left.
Utah Tech.
Utah Tech.
On the 19th on BYU TV. Did you see what Stanford tried to do yesterday?
Yeah.
So Stanford has BYU on Thanksgiving weekend. They announced this plan for free tickets. You can get free tickets to the BYU game if you pledge to buy season tickets next year. They kind of like come test drive some seats.
Right.
But they said there's no penalty for you to cancel on next year's seats if you do it by January 1. So you know what that is? That's free tickets. That's like free pizza. And you can buy some pizza next year, or you don't have to. But
BYU fans are not stupid.
At the end of the day, that promotion was taken down. We're not quite sure why, but we're
BYU's
thinking.
like, yeah, you know what? I'm thinking about season tickets next year, but maybe not. But I should go to that BYU Stanford game for free.
I'm thinking about 10 season tickets next year.
Yep, that's what I was thinking.
If BYU gets their act together, they will take over that Stanford Stadium. The tickets right now, from what I heard, are starting at $16. For that Stanford BYU game. Stanford can't draw a crowd if they gave out money, let alone free tickets. And BYU is going to pack that place. Even if they're not playing great, they're going to pack that place. Yeah. But if they can get 1 or 2, be bowl eligible, heading to the farm on Thanksgiving weekend, it will be fun to see a blue takeover.
And it's a fun stadium. We've watched some games there when our son-in-law Dallas was playing at Stanford. It's a beautiful facility, a great place to watch a football game. Unfortunately for Stanford, when you walk through the tailgate there, you're outside and you're thinking, man, this place is going to be full today because there's a ton of people at this tailgate, and there's students everywhere at the tailgate. And then what happens is you walk into the stadium and you go and you sit down, and most of those people never make it from the tailgate in. They go back to the library.
Distracted.
They stay out at the tailgate. And so there'll be plenty of seats. BYU could actually have more fans in there.
I think they will. I think they will. But they've got to give them some stuff to cheer about, and that starts on Friday night. Steve Cleveland's going to join us in a few minutes. So let's get through some more news and notes. The College Football Playoff Committee met since we were last together. They've yet to figure out when the playoff to expand 12 teams will be. However, Committee Director Bill Hancock says it's possible that they can do it in time for the 24 season. So if they could get to 12 by 24, that's after this season, after next season, and all of a sudden the game changes for so many schools.
It's huge, and the fact that he said that it could by the 2024 season tells me it probably will by the 2024 season. They even threw that out there. He wouldn't throw that out there if he didn't think that
That'd
was
be good.
Happen. So,
it's too much money, and it's such a good thing.
Yeah. How about BYU Hoops Mark Pope? He's going to roll out the annual blue and white game. That's tomorrow night at the Marriott Center. You and I are going to be there.
We'll be on the call.
We're going to be on the call. It's 9 Eastern, 7 Mountain. It's on the BYU TV app, so you can stream it live. Hey, my smart TV at home, I can just stream it right on my TV.
Yeah,
and so
real convenient.
If you got a new TV, you can stream BYU.
If you're in a meeting
TV
somewhere,
live.
you can watch it on your phone.
Watch it on your iPad, watch it on your iPhone. Get the BYU TV app. It's free, and you can watch us tomorrow night. That's 7 o'clock Mountain Time on the app. BYU's first exhibition game, and the only exhibition game. I shouldn't call it the first, but that's next Wednesday, November 2nd. That's against Ottawa. Ottawa's a school out of Arizona.
I would have never thought that.
Yeah.
In fact, when we saw Ottawa's on the schedule, I thought we got Canadians coming.
Yeah,
down.
you and I were calling that. That's on regular BYU TV, over air, on Dish, Direct, that whole deal. So regular BYU TV. The season opener is Monday, November 7th. That's against Idaho State. That one's also on BYU TV. You and I will be there to call that one. Coverage starts at 9 Eastern, 7 Mountain.
There's a million. All right, there's not a million. There's a whole lot of new faces.
Yeah.
So put on the app tomorrow night.
Yeah, and watch this blue and
just
white.
check it out. It's a totally different team than what we saw last spring, with the exception of a couple familiar faces.
Gideon George, you're gonna notice. You're gonna notice Foose
And a Tiki.
Alia Tiki.
You'll see Stewart more than you've ever seen him before.
Right? He's like, and they had big plans for him this year anyhow.
And Spencer Johnson says he's put 18 pounds of muscle on
Yeah.
since last
Yeah.
season.
Let's see. What,
He's still going by the name of Spencer, but
isn't
that's
Trevin,
a totally.
and Trevin's back, right?
He's hurt. He's hurt.
That's
He's
right.
been
He's
hurt for a while.
Saw him in church on Sunday.
But there's so many
He
new
seemed
guys.
healthy enough for church. Why can't he play?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. When he comes back, we need him to shoot threes. But
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get you a roster if we can, because you're going to need it. But it'll be fun tomorrow night.
Yeah. I think this is a team that's going to be able to really shoot the basketball. And they're going to have to learn how to play small, because there's not a lot of bigs out there. But I think we're going to see them play with a lot of pace, and maybe they can press a little bit more and do some things that small teams do. So
Steve Cleveland's coming up here in just a few.
Medward told us that Xbox has the app too. So if you have an Xbox on your TV, you can do the BYU TV app on the Xbox.
That's fantastic.
There you go. So,
Women's hoops, the Cougars, speaking of new looks, with a new head coach
Right.
and a handful of new players. They take on Westminster Thursday night. That one is on the BYU TV app at 9 Eastern, 7 Mountain, with Spencer Linton and Kristen Kozlowski on the call. And so we've had both head coaches on the Wise Guys, and now we'll get to see them get back to work.
Yep. And then how about women's volleyball? Number 17, BYU. So in the top 20, they host Gonzaga Thursday night at the Smith Fieldhouse. What a great environment that is. BYU TV's coverage starts at 9 Eastern, 7 Mountain. They host Portland on Saturday afternoon at 3 Eastern, 1 Mountain, also on BYU TV. And that's always Jerem Jordan and Amy Gant. They're on the call for both of those games this weekend.
Women's soccer up to number 13. They're back.
Yeah.
Up to number 13 in the polls today after a couple of big victories last week. Allie Fryers, the WCC Offensive Player of the Week. Davina Vaca is the Defensive Player of the Week. When you win those two awards, you've had a good week for your team. They host Santa Clara. They're number 23. That's Saturday night at Southfield. It's going to be a cool, cold night. But this is a rematch of last year's national semifinal match, which BYU won. And the Cougars need this one to stay in contention. They're right behind Santa Clara. BYU's got a few more ties. And so, you need wins instead of ties when you're trying to get points. But it keeps them in the thick of things. BYU TV's coverage starts at 8 Eastern, 6 Mountain. That's an hour earlier than normal, with Spencer Linton and Carla Swenson-Haslam on the call. Place will be rocking, hopefully. Hopefully it won't be too cold, but that is a mega match.
Yeah, and it really feels like they found their groove. You think about it. This is a national title game team last year. They lost some crazy talent, but had a ton of talent coming back. And I feel like early in the season they had to kind of gel.
Yeah.
Well, they've gelled. This is a team that can make a run now. They've really found their identity and play.
We need to get Jen Rockwood back on the show
Yeah.
as we close to the tournament. And just kind of, she was with us before the season began, and it's been a roller coaster. But as you mentioned, it's all moving
it's
the right
going
way
forward
now.
for sure. How about BYU baseball? The Cougars wrap up the fall exhibition schedule on Saturday at Miller Park. 1 p.m. Admission is free. So
Let's hope the weather will be 50 and sunny. Is that baseball weather?
not really.
The Phillies are going to play in that kind of weather in the World Series. Bryce Harper, the National League MVP, we congratulate him. His wife, Kayla, played soccer at BYU and Ohio State. And last January, if you remember, Harper was in town. He's a loyal UNLV fan, grew up in Vegas, but he stopped by BYU's practice facility and talked with the team. He and the Phillies opened the World Series on Friday at Houston. I'm all in on Harper. Wish him the best of luck. And MVP, hit the home run to put him in.
He's pounding the ball right
That's
now.
that he's living the dream, and he's doing it the right way and doing the right thing. So Bryce Harper, a running rebel, but he's got Cougar blood in him, and even if he denies it, but he's been here and he helped the baseball team. That makes him part of us.
Yep. Oh, yeah. And,
He's
and
in.
You and I always have a soft spot. You especially, you spent a lot of years as the voice of the Rebels and as the sports anchor and doing news down in Vegas. For how many years were you down there? More than 20.
20
Yeah.
years.
20 years. And then you looped me in and got me a gig doing games with you.
That's right. We were doing Rebel games.
You and I did Rebel
couple of BYU
games
guys.
on TV.
The biggest coup ever. Two BYU guys were doing UNLV games.
For a couple of years. We were traveling to Hawaii with them. And
it took them years to figure out. One day someone woke up going, why do we have BYU guys calling our games?
They're calling you, and why are we taking them to Hawaii every year?
Because you know what? We were all right, and then the production facility of Sports West that came with us was really good.
No, it was really fun. So you and I have a soft spot in our hearts for Vegas, for UNLV and the Rabs a little bit, and so
good luck to Harper.
Yeah, Bryce is a big UNLV guy. So hey, how about cross country? So BYU men and women's teams compete. They're at the WCC Championships on Friday in Portland. They are the first sports to wrap up competition in the WCC for the fall season. The BYU men are ranked number 2 in the country, and the women are number 5. So we wish them the very best this weekend in the WCC Championships, which I'm assuming both will win.
This is a big week for them because they're after national championships, but you just got to deal with this. It's the final time too.
That's right.
There's no more WC-ness for cross country. It's all Big 12. They're the first sport, I think, that finishes and moves on to the Big 12 as far as the next level of competition.
Next level. So it was fun to have Ed Eyestone on with us, their coach, the men's coach and the track coach.
Have we not had every coach on this show?
I think we have.
We got a few we still need to chase down. We got to get Olmsted on before the men's volleyball.
Yeah, for sure.
And women's volleyball, as you mentioned, is right in the thick of things. So maybe after the season.
And women's cross country and track coach, we need to get her here too. She's
Coach Taylor.
Phenomenal. Yeah, she's amazing. It was fun to have Ed because when we talk about can you guys compete in the Big 12, he kind of looked at us like, in cross country? Yeah, we're number 2 in the country. we compete for national championships.
He doesn't know we knew that. We were just setting him up.
We're just asking him.
It's like, hey, let's just ask you the question.
Like, we compete in any league. Yeah. We're like the best in the country. Don't forget it. And you know what? I appreciate that. So he didn't say it like that. I'm putting words in his mouth. But
DJ, will you put the AFR graphic up? Because it's a Pirates theme. It's Halloween. We're heading into Halloween. Next Tuesday night, after further review, we'll break down. We got Pirates Gold up there because the East Carolina Pirates are coming in.
Right.
Friday night at the stadium. So Tuesday night, we'll break this game down, and then we'll set the stage for the last blast at Boise State. Remember, they're not playing anymore after they had like it felt like a 23-year series.
Right.
That's off, and so it all comes down to one last date on the blue turf. So we'll preview that one. It's next Tuesday, 7 Eastern, 5 Mountain on the free BYU TV app, just before an all-new Wise Guys on YouTube, Twitch, and ysguys.com.
I always felt like Mike Leach should have coached at East Carolina. Because he
loves Pirates.
Oh, he's so into Pirates. And I'm like, wouldn't it be appropriate? Like, he's not going to go coach there now. Now he's at Mississippi State, and he's been at Washington State. He's far beyond that.
You know what? And he's a BYU grad. I always have to remind myself of that.
Don't you think that he should have coached East Carolina at some point in his career with as much as he loves Pirates?
Maybe that's where his final resting place will be.
One time I was in his office, and I walked in, and I go, Mike, what's all the pirate stuff? He goes, oh, man, I am so into Pirates. I was like, yeah, no kidding.
He's something else. Coming up on the Wise Guys, November 1st, Alema Harrington is going to join us, our friend from back in the old days at BYU and BYU TV, and, of course, with all he's doing with the Utah Jazz. Max Hall's back with us as we size up this Friday night and get ready for Boise State. We'll also check in with the Boise alumni chapter head for the activities as BYU heads north for the final time. And then Kellen Fowler going to be with us in studio, your son, on November 8th. And you know who's coming after him? I don't want him to be intimidated, but Brandon Campbell of Neon Trees is going to be sitting right there.
They're both going to be in studio with us.
And I asked him, I said, hey, can you play Rise and Shout on your guitar?
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens.
Unless people forget, Kellen, started, I don't know how many straight games, 2.5 straight years at free safety for BYU, was a first-team academic All-American and a finalist for the Drady Trophy for the top academic athlete in the United States in all sports. And then he was the Mountain West, the only, in the entire time that BYU was in the Mountain West Conference, the only Mountain West Student Athlete of the Year award winner. So
fantastic.
As the top athlete.
That'll raise the IQ of this show.
Yes, we're going to bring the IQ up way high in this one.
David Nixon's coming back November 15th, and so is DeLewis Porter, NASA pilot, BYU guy. He's got some stories.
Yeah, we got some. There's some.
It's going to be awesome.
We have some, are you kidding? Not only do we do sports, but we've just reached into some of these other areas that have BYU ties, and it's been so fun for us. We hope it's fun for you guys, but like to have Brandon Campbell in here is going to be really, really cool for Neon Trees.
And having DeLewis in here,
Yeah,
he's going to talk
that?
about flying some planes that are just going to go.
We're going to ask him if what he does is cooler or Clark Hammond. Because Clark Hammond's our guy that coordinates all the flyovers around the country, and
DeLewis was in the older
F-16s
jets, but
F-35s and all of that.
I think he flew the C2, and we're going to have some
So
cool stuff.
It's going to be so fun to talk about him.
Our next guest was the head basketball coach at BYU between 1997 and 2005, where he inherited a 1-25 team and took them to the NCAA tournament 4 years later. Finished with 138 wins. He left BYU to become head coach at Fresno State, which he did for 6 seasons. Now retired, he plays a lot of golf, including today. It's our pleasure to welcome our longtime friend Steve Cleveland to the Wise Guys live from Fresno, California in the man cave. Coach, good to see you.
Good to see you guys.
Hey, how come you and I, have we ever played golf together?
I don't think you've ever wanted to play with me.
No, that's not a true statement. We're going to start off with a false statement? No.
Let me tell you about playing.
I've wanted to play
Let me
with
tell you
a
about
lot.
playing golf with Coach Cleve. First, he's left-handed, so for a minute you're thinking, well, there's Phil Mickelson and Steve Cleveland and the lefty from BYU won the Masters.
Yeah.
Why can't I think of his
Mike
name?
Weir.
Mike Weir. Those are the 3 lefties on the planet. And when you're golfing with Steve, you're with one of the 3 left-handed golfers on the planet. And then he hits it low with his irons, and it goes 300 yards. And then he'll go, missed that one.
And
you're
then,
just like,
did
come
they
on.
hit the green? Did they hit the green and then just stop?
He puts a little backspin on it,
Nice.
rolls it up in there. How did you shoot today?
I shot 81. I played better the back nine. I shot a 39, so it was good. It was good.
So hey,
Beautiful day.
I think we're done.
75 degrees.
We're done with golf around here unless we come over and play with you, Coach, because it's not gonna.
It's winter over here now.
Maybe if you come down to the tournament with us this year, we could play in Vegas.
That would be sweet.
Oh, I'd love to do that.
And I know a guy named. I don't know if you know. I know a guy named Dave McCann. He's got some hookups in Vegas.
Yeah, Dave and I both have lots of golf.
You
hookups
have
in
good
Vegas,
golf
so we can
hookups,
make
too.
that
His are
happen.
better than mine. His are better than mine. Hey, when you had to coach a team that's lost its confidence like the BYU football team has, what kind of things did you do as a coach to help bring it back?
Obviously I'm dealing with 15 or 16 guys and they're dealing with, 80 or 90. But I think the first thing that would come to my mind would be kind of the connections and relationships with young people. And I mean, for me, if I had a kid, or if Travis Hansen was struggling, it may be me and Travis Hansen on the court after practice by ourselves. And I did a lot of one-on-one things, whether it was on the floor or maybe just going to lunch and just getting that connection and making sure it's there and that he understands that I trust him and that I'm with him. Because anybody that has been involved in athletics has gone through highs and lows. And so I think for a football team, last time I played football, I think was Pop Warner in 7th and 8th grade. But the one thing that I've seen and watched the last 2 or 3 years is that Kalani has developed a really healthy culture. And all the evidence that I have seen is that he has great relationships with his guys. He has a great relationship with the community and his staff. But I think the first thing I always did was either go out and work a guy out or watch film together. I'm telling you right now that when you, as a head coach, go and it's just you and that individual, and I don't know whether it's a quarterback or a wide receiver group, a small group, when you can have that one-on-one or one-on 2 or 3 guys and sit there and just talk honestly and kind of navigate the difficulty that maybe they're going through at a particular time, it strengthens guys' confidence to know that the head coach would sit down. And I found that when I really had guys, especially guys that had performed in the past, much like this group has done, I just found like we had a lot of success there. And it kind of got them comfortable, put them in a position where they got their confidence back, and they knew that I had their back and that I trusted them. And I think those are things that are really important. And I mean, I've watched this football program, and I know they have all those culture things working. They have amazing relationships. And maybe you can't just meet with a few guys. But I think as a head coach and whatever sport I was, I would reach out to the leaders of that team. The seniors, the juniors, the guys that are counted on in the locker room.
Yeah.
And those are always were the first guys that I tried to make contact with and get a pulse of the team and where we were, and then work from there on the technical things. I mean, one of the things that's the most disruptive thing that ever happened in my tenure was injuries. And all of a sudden that depth chart, football, I got so many guys, but I know in basketball, you lose a couple of key guys, it can be really disruptive, no matter how good an attitude, no matter what your culture or everything you're doing. It can be difficult if you don't have the guys that you need on the field or on the floor at any given time.
Cleve, you talk about maybe getting with some guys individually. Football team's really big. This could still be effective though, right? So if you took a handful of guys that you knew that the rest of the team looked up to, you take a Jaron Hall who's the quarterback and maybe a Puka Nacua. Would it work if you just did it with a couple of guys on the offense and a couple of guys on the defense? Would they in turn then go lead the rest of the group for you if you could make that connection and build their confidence?
I have always felt the best teams that I ever coached for 35 years in high school and junior college and Division I, that our most successful teams were the player-led teams. They weren't coach-led. I think there's a misnomer in the public's eye that coaches do this and coaches do. I'm going to tell you, players win games. Players win games. Coaches, yes, they put the schemes together, but at the end of the day, the guys who win games are the players. And you've got to entrust them to do the things that they're good at. I like it. I mean, I've never coached football before, and maybe that's just too large a group, but I think getting together with those that are leaders can always be a positive thing, and let them take control of that locker room without coaches there. I think a lot of times when guys have come back to me when we were struggling, I'd get word back, hey, the guys met together. Man, that's a good sign when the guys meet together and they kind of work through those things. And, that's what great teams have. They have player-led teams. And but there's a lot of things that impact winning and losing and how you navigate all those difficulties. I can't even imagine. And that's the thing that's most impressive to me is how good this program's been and what amazing coaches they must have, that they must have relationships. And I know right now everybody's kind of is losing their minds a little bit with what's happened, but you have to, coaches and players have to trust in what they know. You can't all of a sudden change all the schemes. That's not happening when you played 8 games already. You can make adjustments. You can certainly give new guys opportunities. But this is a time when the 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 guys that are leaders in this team need to step up and hold everybody accountable. I'm talking about players, not coaches.
Former BYU basketball coach Steve Cleveland with the Wise Guys tonight. Now, I remember watching your introductory news conference from my house in Vegas when you were named head coach at BYU, and I remember wondering, Steve Cleveland, who is that? Fresno City Community College, where is that? And I called my dad, who was the director of the Cougar Club, and he said, trust me, this guy's going to be good. And you were good. But when you interviewed for the job, did it matter to you at all that the team you were inheriting had just gone 1-25?
That's an interesting question because I don't think I ever really thought about that. Lynn Archibald, a dear friend of mine, was really a point of contact for me, and he's one that kind of made a phone call to me that possibly getting involved in the job, and obviously that was a difficult time in his life because his health it had been a real struggle, and we had developed a friendship. Jerry Tarkanian was a really good friend of his. They were college teammates, and he had coached with him. So we had kind of a connection, and Lynn would come through town and recruit. And he kind of shared with me, kind of opened a door for me. But I don't ever really remember thinking that. I don't think I ever once thought, oh, my goodness, they won one game. I knew Roger Reed. I mean, I had been on Roger Reed. I had come to visit with Roger 2 or 3 years earlier when there was a job opening there. I had been in Roger's office. I had been met with him when he came and played Fresno State. We're good friends. And I knew he's a great coach. And I didn't know all the circumstances, but to this day, he's one of the best coaches I've ever been around. I mean, the guy can flat out coach. And I learned a lot from him. And so when I had this opportunity to get involved, I turned the paperwork in and did all those things. But Lynn really helped me navigate that. and got me in the door. And I spent a couple of hours with President Bateman when I came to make a visit, like probably a lot of those that were candidates for the job. And it just felt really good. I still didn't really believe, I don't think in my mind, that they were going to hire a guy like me coming from a community college that nobody knew. But it felt good. And the more I was around President Bateman and those that I met with and talked with, and at that time, it seemed in my heart that this was a good place for me and a great opportunity. And it worked out and just changed my life.
Coach, so you get the job. How long are you in the job where you're actually here and you're seeing what the pieces are and all of that before you can wrap your head around, oh, wow, this is the amount of work that it's going to take to get this thing back rolling again? How long was that? What was that moment like?
So I remember flying back to Fresno. I was coaching still. And, you know how JUCO guys are, man. I mean, we were together. They were so excited for me. And we ended up finishing the state playoffs, and I got on a plane and I flew. And as I was flying back by myself, and I was, at that time I didn't even have a staff. I mean, I knew Heath Schroyer was going to be with me, but at that point in time, I had no idea who was going to hire. And there was on that plane some real soul searching. And I thought, oh my gosh, what have I got myself into here? And, because you believe you can do anything. And I learned so much from so many people that influenced me, people outside of the program, guys in the program. Rondo Fehlberg was amazing, just such a good friend, and guided me and trusted me. But it was a challenging time. And we had to immediately go to junior college kids. There was no portal. I wish there had been a transfer portal. It'd have been a lot easier.
Well, speaking of junior colleges, you go down to Dixie to find your assistant coach, Dave Rose. So you go down to St. George and make the pitch. Does he think you're nuts? He's like, what?
So let me tell you a story about Dave. So that year previously, we had gone to their tournament down in Dixie. And we never played each other. We played LA City College, and I think we played some team in the desert. And we ended up not playing each other, but I got to know him a little bit. But the person I knew was his assistant, John Wardenberg. I had met John working a few BYU basketball camps. And so, as I'm thinking about a staff, and his name kept coming up in my mind. And so I immediately go back to Hutchinson for the junior college tournament. And I'm by myself. I'm meeting. I knew a lot of junior college guys. I knew a lot of assistants, because a lot of assistants that come into we had a lot of really good players at City, right. A lot of Division I guys. So I knew a lot of coaches. That night when I was in Hutch, I just had an impression to call Dave. And when I called Dave, it's almost like I was, hey, Dave, this is Cleve. How are you doing? And I said, I want to talk to you. He said, well, you want to talk to John? And he knew John and I were good friends. I think in his mind, he thought, he's thinking I want to hire John Wardenberg at the time. And I go, no, I don't want to talk to John. I want to talk to you. I said, I'm flying back to Salt Lake tomorrow morning. Where are you going to be? He says, well, Chanel's playing in the state high school basketball tournament up in Salt Lake. Gave me the time. I flew in, got my car, and went over to a little restaurant and sat down with him. And I spent about 2 hours with him. Yeah. And I think he was a little bit in shock, to be honest with you. And it was like, what? And so anyway, we had a great talk. I think he felt good about it. He wanted to share, I said, talk to your wife, chat with her, and then let's meet in a day or two, because in fact, why don't we just meet tomorrow? And as you're coming down, going back to St. George, we can all talk about it. So fast forward a day, we're in my office, Dave comes in, Chanel, his wife, everybody's there, Cheryl's there. And I start, talking to them as a group and about my experience in getting the job. And all of a sudden I start talking about Dave coming and working. And all of a sudden, Chanel has got like crocodile tears. She's crying. Cheryl's crying. And I look at Dave and he's got a smirk on his face. I said, please tell me you've talked to him about the conversation we just had for 2.5 hours yesterday. And he goes, no, I never said anything. I said, give me a break, Dave.
Come on.
So I had to manage that and work through that. And, Chanel, she's going to a senior in high school,
Right.
going to leave all her friends. She didn't care anything about BYU basketball. And anyway, that was the beginning. And then eventually Dave and I had spent about 4 months living in the Marriott there, downtown Provo, and put a staff together and move forward. So it was kind of an interesting experience with Dave.
So it's the three of you together, really, because you and Heath and Dave are.
And then Wardenberg was in there.
Wardenberg eventually came right up to BYU.
And well, let me tell you a story about Brian Santiago.
Oh yeah.
So I'm at my house now. I knew Brian because he played at Fresno State.
And Brian is the associate AD now with Tom Homo. Okay,
right. And so Brian is working for a company. He's in sales. We played some city league together. We had a group of coaches that particular. I had not played in a long time, and so I got around Brian a little bit more and got to know him and his wife. But I followed him when he played for Gary Colson at Fresno State, who was the coach there, and we were good friends. And one night, so I get the job, and all of a sudden one night there's a knock on the door, and he goes, "Cleve, I got to come with you. I want to be a part of your staff." And he's in the sales business and he has never coached. He's obviously a really good player. And I said, "Brian, first of all, it's a stretch them hiring me. Okay? I mean, come on. I mean, they had to go out on a large limb just to hire me. And then I bring in more junior college guys. And now I'm going to tell them I'm going to bring in a guy that's a salesperson who's got a really solid basketball background." And so, it was like he was really disappointed. I said, "Well, we can talk more about it." And so I started thinking about Brian and how good he was with people and those kinds of things. And I thought, I called Rondo and I said, "Hey, we've never had an ops guy here. There's never been a basketball operations guy.
Director of basketball operations, yeah.
Yeah, we've never had that at BYU." And so I said, "Hey, can we fund it? Can we do this?" And through it all, we were able to create that position. And Brian was able. Now, the funny thing about Brian, we didn't have any room. There was no office. So Brian and I, this is honestly the only place in America this would happen. Brian and I share an office for 4 years.
The head coach and the director of basketball operations share an office.
It's insane. And if to make matters worse, over there in the corner of the office are stacks of catalogs and books and things of all the stuff he's still selling. So he's working that job.
Oh my goodness!
You're quite an office. A lot of coming and going there.
It was a little crazy, but Brian was a great asset to me and to the staff in many different ways.
There's a side story which we're not going to talk about tonight, but we'll talk about when we get Jeff Judkins on here. Is that creation of that position that you did for Brian was the same position that allowed you to bring Juddy from Utah to BYU and then over to the women's head coaching job where he's been a legend until retiring. And so that creating that little thing for Santiago turned into some really big things for the whole athletic department.
And we will tell that story. I will tell you this, though. I got a phone call from Juddy one night at about 11:45 from him to me, who I really didn't know him that well. And that's where it started. And Juddy's been a dear friend ever since.
Yeah.
Hey, is there a game early on, Cleve, that you look back on and you just go, yeah, that's where it turned. That's where I knew that we were on to something and that we were going to turn this thing around and eventually we'd be an NCAA tournament team.
It actually happened our first year. And I remember we at that time were like, well, I don't know, we were probably like 6 or 7 and 16 or whatever. We had such a difficult task that first year, and we were undermanned and undersized and coaches that were trying to figure stuff out. But I will never forget our road trip to New Mexico and to UTEP. We had 7 wins. We needed to win both games, which was an impossible. At that time, New Mexico was 13th or 14th in the country, sellouts and
at the
great Coach Haskins at UTEP.
I called that game, Coach. I called that game for KSL in the pit, and you rolled out the black uniforms.
Yep, we did. I was just going to say that.
Yes.
That was a classic. And we didn't have enough guts to do that on campus for fear that I might get, they might fire me. And for just having black of anything, in terms of a uniform, that was so different.
Because this wasn't in the color scheme, yeah.
Yeah, the guys wanted to wear them. And I said, let's go, man. We got nothing to lose. And we went in there, and obviously It was a crazy night, and we end up beating New Mexico, losing a 20-point lead in the second half and coming back and winning that game. I can remember the next morning, nobody's going to know this guy. You guys will remember. Sports Babe was a very famous sports journalist. And
the Sports
she
Babe.
Called me. Yeah, she called me at 7 o'clock in the morning. Coach Clee, congratulations on that huge win. And then we go to UTEP. I get to Coach Haskins, and I get there at UTEP. We're practicing, and he comes on the floor and says, "Coach, I don't know you. Love to spend a few minutes with you when you're done. If you'd like to meet." I said, "Oh, I'd love to meet." And so when practice was over, I go up to his office, and he sits down with me, and he said, "Man," he says, "that was a hell of a win, Coach. I don't know how you guys did that." And I said, "Hey, it happened." And he said, "Can I give you a little bit of advice and counsel?" This is from an iconic coach. I think
This is the Bear.
This is the Bear.
I'm all ears. And he says, "First of all, I'm kind of looking at your schedule, man. I don't know who's making the schedule, but you're going to schedule yourself right out of a job. So number one, get control of your schedule." Okay.
Great advice.
And number two, he says, "Number two, I know you just got there, but man, you guys aren't good enough. You're not going to last long in this job if you don't get some guys." I said, "Thank you, Coach."
Thanks, Coach.
And he said the third thing, and it's a bit down the line, is you just got to really coach them up. And I looked at him, and I thought, for him to even take any time with me, I so appreciated. But I'd never forgotten that. And we end up beating them in like triple overtime.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible experience. We won both those games, and we that first year qualified for the WAC tournament.
That's right.
So that was somewhat of a miracle. But that right then and there, I knew down the road that good things were going to happen.
A little bit down that road, you win the conference championship in Vegas in the tournament in 2001. Now, BYU's only won one other conference tournament title since 1992, and that's the one you won in 2001. That's a long time for just two titles, but you beat New Mexico to get to the big dance. What was that feeling like when you walked off the floor knowing that you were going to the big dance for the first time as head coach?
Man, I can't tell you how I get little tingles right now, you just bringing it up. It's one of those things that we had been through so much. I tell you what the hardest thing is getting young people in the state of Utah to think that we had a real program.
Yeah.
And we fought that tooth and nail, man. I mean, it's like nobody would talk to us. Nobody. Utah dominated all the recruiting and other schools outside, and it was really hard. And I had a chance. I sat there with Terrell and McKelly, Terrell Leday and McKelly Wesley, Trent Whiting after the game, and we just kind of sat there and had a quiet moment together, especially McKelly, who had been through so much and been there from the beginning. And to win that and to celebrate that, that's a special. And you know what? That group still this day, Terrell Leday got married about a year ago, and in fact, Brian Santiago came down. Some guys came down for his wedding. That group is still really close. And it's because of that, some of those turning of the program and getting back to where we could get back to the tournament and win championships again.
Yeah, we could see those guys around. We had Trent here. His wife, of course, is the new basketball coach here on the women's side. He came in studio with us, and we had a great visit with him. Hadn't seen him for a long time. I see McKelly around a lot. It's really fun to see those guys. And as you talk about teams that are player led, you got some great leaders in those early days. And when you finally turn the corner and you're going to NCAA tournament now, I would think that those were player-led teams, right?
They were all player. I mean, Travis Hansen ended up becoming a great leader, but McKelly he really was the foundation. But I look at Terrell, who was soft-spoken, Trent, soft-spoken, Eric Nielsen, great leader, Matt Montague, guys, Nate Cooper. You're talking about guys that were all really driven. And they had to live through some really difficult times and some really difficult defeats, and they just never gave up. And that was, and even when I left, I mean, I started thinking about Keena Young and Lee Camard and all that group that continued that tradition, and they watched all those guys. And so there was that leadership, and Dave just did an amazing job with those guys. But the culture was set, and it was there, and give all the credit to those guys who just have carried on that program. And then obviously there's still a great tradition in the program, always has been. But early on, when it was real easy not to believe we could get something done, it was so nice to be able to have players surround you and say, Coach, we can do this.
Former BYU head basketball coach Steve Cleveland's on the Wise Guys tonight, live from Fresno. Before we shift to the current Cougars, let me ask you this, and I love those pictures behind you. There's you as a coach at the Marriott Center with a packed place, and then there's you at what's it called for Fresno? What's that arena called?
Save Mart Center.
Save Mart Center. That's right.
Dave and I did a whole tournament over at Save Mart Center.
We spent some time there
where we were calling 4 games a day. I was about to go out of my mind. 4 games a day.
So, what was more meaningful, Steve? Your first big win at BYU, or the night you came back to BYU as Fresno State's head coach and received a standing ovation?
Oh, that was a special thing. I mean, the Fresno thing was really hard. And when all of a sudden lots of sanctions came down, things I didn't expect would happen. But coming back to BYU that year meant everything in the world to me. I mean, I never usually cried before a game, but I was really emotional. It was a really difficult time, and they obviously had a great team. And playing them the year before at the Save Mart Center, those experiences. I mean, I start thinking about the beginning when we started putting the camps together and changing just the little things with a father and son camp that we started many years ago. And I think how that created it helped our fan base and got people interested in the program again. And a lot of those kinds of things that we were able to do, but nothing ever felt like it did when I went back to the Marriott Center. I mean, that's a special place to me, always will be. And, I can look back. There are times, I'm not any different than anybody else. You kind of second guess yourself about things. And I know that a lot of the guys that were in the program and guys that continue to play for Dave, I've continued to have a relationship with. Jonathan Tominari is a character. I saw him when I was back, when JT was back, and I was there last year for a volleyball match, and I saw him and we got a chance. And I remember, him making a commitment in my kitchen and how much I love that kid and so happy for his success and all of the guys that continued on. But that was a special night, Dave.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit about current program. I have one other question. Which is a more difficult job? Head basketball coach, Division I basketball coach, or mission president? Or is it the same job?
Or add one more. Bishop of a YSA ward that you just completed.
Which is the toughest assignment?
We just had Brandon Doman on as a stake president of a YSA.
Brandon's a YSA stake president right now, and he just preceded you on the show. But and for those that don't know, Coach Cleveland was the mission president back in the Indianapolis, Indiana mission, they did a great job back there. We had some of your former missionaries come through our area back here and just loved you. What's the toughest job? Mission president, bishop of a YSA ward, or a Division I basketball coach?
Well, the one thing about the church callings, they don't yell and scream and defang your name and get mad at you and upset when you lose.
Most of the time they don't, yeah.
Well, when we didn't quite get that number of baptisms we were looking for. The thing I was the most unprepared for was probably the mission president. That came as kind of a surprise. And Elder Bednar was the one that actually called us and chatted with us. And early on when we came back after that, I came to work with Dave and you guys and doing some TV. I was working for ESPNU, doing about 20 or 30 games a year. And so I knew that was going to be my home for a while. And when they sat down with us and asked us if this is something that we consider, I couldn't take the job that year. I said, but give us some time. And so Elder Bednar just said, well, we'll come back in a year and let's just see where things are. And Elder Bednar and then President Elder Eyring at that time, he was instrumental in my getting the job. I had a relationship with him, and they called us again. And Kip and I had a year to kind of think about it, and I thought I wanted to maybe consider getting back into coaching. But anyway, long story short, we decided if that's what we're supposed to do, that's what we'll do. And that next 10 or 11 months, wow. I had a lot of catching up to do. Let's just say that.
And you get called
one thing that wasn't hard was being around 18 to 25-year-olds.
Yeah.
I mean, and we had there were some themes, and I was in a state where everyone loved hoops,
right.
Indiana. And I have a little presentation that I made called Touch All the Lines. I can still remember doing that in a state conference and kind of applying it to gospel principles. And I'm looking down at like 70 and 80-year-old women in the congregation, and they're nodding their heads. And, these are people who've grown up with hoops. And I said, you guys know what a line tag is? Everybody in the place knew what a line tag was.
Yes.
So that has probably been the most difficult thing and probably the most life-changing for me.
Yeah.
And I would submit, I don't know, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, Coach. You told us that the very best teams you've ever been associated with were player-led. How about in the mission field? Are the very best missions the ones that are missionary-led, where the leaders are within?
No question. I'll just mention his name because he's playing with Elder Hamuli, who's on the football team this year.
Yes.
And he had been at Stanford, and he was my last assistant to the president.
Austin.
And
Houston.
Houston, yeah.
He's a sweet young man. I had a chance just recently to connect with him about 7 or 8 months ago and see him and talk to him. I hadn't seen him. But there is no question that the leadership in a mission is everything with the young women and the young men. And I was very fortunate to come into a mission where the missionaries were obedient. They struggled a little bit with finding and teaching and baptizing and some of those kinds of things at the time. But man, they bought in, had just and then the last year we had a temple dedicated, Indianapolis temple. And President Irene came back out and he dedicated that temple, and he was kind of one of the guys that had hired me. And so that was special to have a temple built and to see the people of Indianapolis, just great people. I mean, I love I need to find those Midwest prices for homes and taxes.
Oh, yeah. Good luck with that.
You get a river, you get a lake back there.
Would Paul George come by the mission home when you were out there? Your guy
Paul?
No.
I saw Paul. I had to give permission. I called my IFR. I said, is it all right if I go to a game? And it took, and I'll tell you how dumb I was. I didn't know this. For the first year, Kip and I never took a preparation day. It was supposed to be, well, you just pick a day, afternoon, evening, on Friday night. And finally I asked one of the brethren, I said, do we have a preparation day? I said, yeah, you just take an evening or whatever. Once I heard that, then I went to 3 or 4 games, and I had my grandkids come out once or twice, and they went into the locker room. And so I connected with Paul there and saw 2 or 3 games. It was fun to see him. And we did, some good things we did for the church there too, because there was a number of articles about why I was there, being his coach. And it was a pretty cool thing. And being a basketball coach and a mission president in the state of Indiana, it helped me develop relationships quicker than normal.
That's I don't know if did I tell you, Cleve, about when I ran into Paul and Kawhi at the
No.
I should have told you this. I don't know why I didn't call you and tell you this, but they were playing the Jazz in the playoffs. Clips were playing the Jazz, and I happened to be in a morning breakfast meeting up at the Grand America, and Kawhi and Paul come around the corner as I'm coming out. We all had masks on at the time, right?
Yeah.
And I'd done a bunch of stuff with Kawhi when he was at San Diego State covering the league. So I pull my mask down and I say, "Hey, Kawhi, but it's Blaine Fowler from and he's like, "Oh my gosh!" And so he came over and we talked about coach down there and the San Diego State program. Those coaches down there, I love those guys, and they're good friends of yours. But so we're talking, and Paul's just kind of off on the side, not saying much, just being quiet, not. And I said, "Hey, and by the way, I have a dear friend that you know well." And I said, "Coach Cleveland's a very close friend of mine." "Oh my gosh, Coach." Like, he came over and then he just brightened up and he just talked about like the influence that you had been on his life and how great you were and all this. I'm like, wow. Like, it was really, really cool to talk to him. And he had no interest in having a conversation. He knew that Kawhi and I knew each other. He had no interest in having a conversation. As soon as I mentioned you, he was right over in that conversation. He couldn't say enough about you. I should have told you that. It was great.
Let me tell you an experience. His parents when he decided to, after 2 years to go out, I mean, he stays for 2 years and we're really good.
Yeah,
And
you talk about players, right? There's one of the greats.
his parents and him came in and wanted to meet with me. And I mean, it's hard for me to even talk about, but it was a very emotional meeting between the four of us. And they came in there to apologize because they knew how hard it was to build this thing and dealing with all the sanctions and loss of scholarships and all that kind of stuff. They knew how hard it had been, and they knew that Paul would be the anchor of this team. And I will never forget that. I mean, I said, do not apologize for a minute to me. This young man has earned this. He's done it on his own. He's worked. He wasn't a highly sought after high school player. He just worked his way to a point where after a sophomore year, he wasn't even first team all conference, but guys knew that this guy had the huge upside. And so I love Paul. I love his mom and dad. I had a chance to connect with them a couple of times in Indiana when I was out there and sat with them. And, but I appreciate you sharing that with me. He's a great young man. We went down to a Clippers game, took my kids down there and during Christmas time, and fun to see him. And just great young man, having a great career.
Yeah, my bad for not sharing that with you sooner. I should have called you right after that, Coach, and told you because I was really taken back by his fondness for you. It was really fun. A couple years ago.
Paul George with the Clippers, one of your big fans, and you helped get him where he is. It's fun to see that appreciation. Mark Pope is going to roll out the blue-white game tomorrow. Blaine and I will be on the call, and you can see it on the BYU TV app. He's got a cornucopia of new faces on this roster. We've actually never seen a roster with more overhaul. But when you take fifth place in the WCC, that's not good enough, and you got to do it. So he went and did it. How hard is it going to be for him to blend all those guys together when they've had such little time to get together beyond the summer and a couple of months here in the fall, and that's it?
You know, about a few weeks ago, Coach Pope called me and wanted to know if I was coming back for an alumni event, which I wasn't. And I took just a quick moment. I said, well, how are the guys, you know? And he says, you know, these are great young men. There is a huge learning curve for a lot of them. You know, anytime you get guys that have never played together, you know, that chemistry doesn't just pop because you practice hard. I mean, chemistry is something that comes from playing together. And he really, you know, he said, I really like this group. It's just going to take time. And I said, I understand, but it is challenging. It is challenging. And I think that patience is really important. Patience is important for Mark and his staff. Patience is important for the guys. And I think you have to have those conversations. You're not going to make excuses. I mean, all the intangibles, the effort, the attitude, the never giving up, and all of those intangibles have to be there every day for them to get better. I mean, I've seen 3 or 4 of them play, and one of the young men, Elder Hall, was what he was here in
Dallin Hall,
in Mission Field in Fresno. I got to know him and spend some time with him. I loved his spirit about his competitiveness, and it just felt like he was excited about the guys, and he'd share a few things with me. But I just know that I've watched this group. I've watched Mark, and it was a tough year last year. But like Kalani, these guys, and like Tom Homo, these guys get and understand what a culture looks like and what it has to look like going forward. And I think people have to be patient. We tend not to be. I mean, you start thinking about the WCC has been tough enough as it is. I mean, last year was the best WCC league I've ever seen during the time I've watched, with Gonzaga, St. Mary's, San Francisco, Santa Clara, BYU, and it was a great league last year. And I don't know how it's going to be. I'm sure St. Mary's and Gonzaga and San Francisco has a few guys back, so they might be pretty solid too. But I would just say this, that people need to be patient, because it just can't happen. Practice is one thing. You got to have game experience. And a lot of these guys have not played at this level, and they certainly haven't played many reps together. And I know they jump into it with a really good tournament. So I know this staff knows how to handle this, but I know the pressures of a community that want them to be successful now. But I would just say people need to be patient. It's going to take a little bit of time. And really, big picture, they're going into the #1 basketball conference in America. in the world that's not, that aren't pros. And so sometimes you have to do certain things to get ready for that next step, as well as trying to win games every night. But I'm excited about watching them. I plan on being in town for a few games.
Good.
And certainly the Big 12 is going to be just amazing to be a part of that.
That'd be really fun to have Kansas and the like coming in. We you know,
my God.
Final Four type teams coming in for home games every year will be fun. A couple of youngins that we saw last year, bigs that had some promise. Fousseyni Traore, he seemed to just improve by leaps and bounds every time he walked out on the floor last year. And then Atiki Ali, Mark told us last year, man, he's really raw, but his skills, he's like, he has a Big 12 skill set. And when he's just talking about physical abilities like feet, hands, jumping ability, length, all those kinds of things. Those two guys, what can we expect in terms of improvement from last year to this year from those two big guys?
I think probably some of the things like Tesori inside. I think at the end of the year, with all the things going on, that it became easier for them to guard him because guys weren't hitting threes, and all of a sudden the perimeter players were knocking shots down and people started sagging, and it was really hard. I watched him kind of evolve to about midway through the season. He was getting deep post touches. He was attracting double teams and kicking out and doing those things. And at the end of that season, it was more and more difficult because people were preparing for them differently. I think the thing that you're going to see, I don't know, I haven't watched practice, but I think both of them, having gone through what they went through last year, probably motivated them to really spend a lot of time and effort watching film, working out, being able to step away. I think for Sora, he's got to be able to step away and hit a 17-foot shot. When he can do that, he can pick and pop, not just roll. I mean, bigs are bigs, and then all of a sudden you can front. It's easier to front him and keep him from getting the ball and giving him post touches deep down or covering down. People have different techniques to guard both those guys, but they should be coming in with a lot of confidence. Number one, they've been here, they've been through it, and I would expect in their own way. I mean, I don't know either one of those guys, but when you listen to them being interviewed, I mean, it's so impressive. They seem, without guile, so humble, so willing to work, and so all in that I can't help but believe that they're going to be much better this year. And I'm sure, too, just through the growth of nerves and matchups and those kinds of things. So they are going to have to rely on those guys early on. What kind of guard play do you hear from them? I know they brought some guys in. Is there anybody that's kind of popped up?
The one guy that they're really hoping can be an immediate impact is the Coastal Carolina transfer Rudy Williams, who they think can really help. And Trey Stewart, fresh off of a mission last year. We talked to Mark, and Mark thought that he'd make a quantum leap from last year to this year. Really athletic, can play downhill, can turn the corner and finish at the rim, but also can shoot. Those are two kind of known commodities because Trey Stewart was here last year in the program, and Rudy played at Coastal Carolina at a high level. But when you talk about shooting, I think they've been pleasantly surprised by how good the return missionaries are shooting the ball right away. And those are big guys that can shoot, the kind that you used to love. You love those 6'5" wings, right? And Hall's not 6'5", but he's really strong. He's a physical kid, right? And so I think this team is going to be a much better perimeter shooting team than they were last year, which, as you mentioned, is really going to help Foose and Atiki inside. If you got guys that can knock down shots, everything's better inside, right?
Yeah, and that's what happened at the end of the year. I mean, guys weren't shooting, and then you double the point guard constantly, and all of a sudden, those guys were attracting 2 and 3 defenders, and it was really hard to score in the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season.
Yes.
But if you can open that floor up with good perimeter shooting, I don't think we have any idea what the potential is of either one of those guys scoring inside as well.
Yeah, Toulson can shoot it. Hall can shoot it. They've got some guys that can shoot it. So
look forward to seeing them tomorrow night in a scrimmage against each other, and then an exhibition game next week, and then it starts for real. And, Coach, we look forward to having you on with us periodically through the season. One, because you're smart and you've done it, and you're a friend, and you'll do it for free. And so those are 4 very key things, not necessarily in that order. Hey, before we get to 5 questions and let you go, so let's say we got 4 left-handed golfers. We mentioned you. There's Mickelson. There's Weir, and let's throw in Steve Young.
Oh man!
And
are you
and there's
Steve,
you.
Are you saying Steve's a golfer?
Yeah, because he has his golf fundraiser.
Coach, this
and
is a
all that
loose
stuff.
term, golf.
So in a free throw shooting contest, how many shots would you have to spot those guys to make it a fair competition?
I'm thinking Mike Weir didn't play much basketball in high school.
Not in Canada.
I'm thinking Steve Young seems like he's pretty athletic and would be a good shooter. Who was my fourth?
Mickelson.
Phil Mickelson.
You know, the other lefty that we know.
He can't shoot
Yeah.
it. I don't think Phil can shoot
So what do you think you'd have to spot him at?
If we were shooting best out of 10?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that I could make 8. You let me warm up a little bit, I might make 10, but I'd probably make 8. I'm doubtful that any of them would make 5.
I love it.
Yeah, you can still
Don't
shoot
tell
it.
Steve that.
I'm not gonna tell
Actually, I
Steve.
believe Steve Young might be able to make 6 or 7.
Here's the thing about Steve. That if you set a challenge out for Steve, and it doesn't even have to be any money on it, it's just a pride thing. He would spend every day for the next 6 days shooting nothing but free throws so that he could make 9. That's Steve.
I know he would.
That's how he is.
Someday, by the way, we don't have time today, but I have the greatest Steve Young story when we were in Croatia that you could, and I believe I told Steve the story, but someday we need an opportunity to tell that story to the BYU Cougars.
Next time we have you on, we're doing it for sure.
Yes,
So.
we would have never got into the country if it wasn't for his.
Steve. Wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to make a note of that, and that's going to be priority number 1. When we have you and when we have Steve on,
Yes.
we'll ask him that.
We love Steve
Give
Young.
me a call.
Steve's one of my favorites. We're really close to him. He's taking care of my kids when they were over at Stanford. We love the Youngs. They're the best.
All right, here come 5 questions. You ready?
Right.
Okay. And you just answer them fast. First thing that comes to your mind. Favorite sports movie?
Hoosiers.
I knew it.
Wise answer.
Favorite
you, me,
singer-
and Marie Osmond. Hoosiers.
Yeah, Marie Osmond is Hoosiers too. Favorite singer or band?
Singer or band?
Yeah.
I'm an R&B guy. I'm going to go with Temptations.
Ooh, I like
old
that.
school.
Wait, the Temptations. I got sunshine. That's
Yeah.
on a cloudy day.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, Cleve and I get together. We just start singing. Okay.
I'm a big R&B guy.
Yeah. Favorite breakfast cereal.
Shredded wheat.
Well, come on.
Frosted shredded wheat.
Frosted,
Frosted
okay.
shredded wheat.
You saved
Gosh,
it.
you saved it.
You saved
because we don't allow anyone to choose a healthy cereal.
We would have peppered you for every week of this show from here on out until you came back with the
what are those
frosted.
cinnamon toast? I like frosted shredded wheat, and I also like that cinnamon toast.
Yeah,
Okay,
a lot of
cinnamon
people
toast
like
crunch.
that stuff.
That's a popular one. We like that. Yeah. If somebody comes in here and says like straight Wheaties without sugar on it,
Or shredded
they
wheat.
can never come back on the show. So
Oatmeal without brown sugar. or
Stop
something
it.
like that.
Stop.
No,
Don't
no.
even bring that up.
favorite Halloween candy.
Candy corn.
You've got to be kidding me.
I love that stuff.
That stuff is the worst. Someone dropped off some on our porch last night. I
Hey.
thought,
Hey, I
who
mean,
brings somebody
today,
candy
in modern
corn?
day, I probably say the little mini Twix.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I like those.
Candy corns.
At our house on Halloween, last year we had 1,100 kids come.
Yeah, it's a big time.
I'm not telling
in
anybody where
Provo.
we live, but 1,100 kids came.
Really?
Don't let them
Yeah.
down. Don't give out apples this year. Give out some good stuff.
If you don't give out full-size candy bars in our neighborhood, you get laughed out of the place. It's terrible. Like I go broke. I have to take out a loan every year for Halloween. So, okay.
Here's number 5. This is a good one.
Number 5, the favorite player you've ever coached.
Wow. Man, you hate to answer that question because you leave somebody out.
Well, if you name the favorite, you have to leave out like 500 other ones.
Yeah,
so
'cause
that's
you've coached
not
a lot
like
of
it's
guys
going to
over the
be.
years.
You can't just offend one guy. You can offend like 499.
Dave thought of this question, by the way, Cleve. I didn't want to put you on a spot like this. That's a hard.
Oh,
Well, yeah, but this one goes right to the core.
Yeah.
Let's see. You got
It's like he asked me, who's your favorite teammate you've ever played with? I'm like, I'm not telling you that.
yeah. That's a hard question. Let me.
well, you've already talked about Paul George. That was significant. You go back.
I think the BYU thing. I will tell you this. I don't have a favorite guy, but I'm going to tell you that the leadership of McKelly Wesley changed this program. And I think, I'll be honest with you, the guy that I knew in Fresno and had a relationship with, and Terrell Lede. He might be the smartest guy I've ever coached.
Wow. Terrell Lede.
But
That's cool.
I listen, Trent, you go down the list. I can't pick a favorite because they all
so
have
many amazing guys. I love that, though. I don't know that people realize that McKelly Wesley came in on the heels of, some rough and literally was the nucleus to turn a program around. He was a dog.
And those guys, Trent Whiting and Travis Hansen, would tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
They would usually say, who was the leader of that team? And I appreciate his heart because McKelly went through some tough things in his life.
Yes.
And he overcame them. And he's got kids playing now. It's fun to see him on social media. And
yes, it's great. That's why I see him. I see him out
family.
at the youth basketball stuff. I see him all the time. And when people say, "Oh, that guy's got some dog in him, like toughness," that's McKelly. I think of McKelly Wesley because McKelly Wesley absolutely had some dog in him.
You know why that was such a good question? Because it brought out that answer.
Yes.
So let's not dog the question. Let's just focus on the answer, which was very insightful. Nice job.
Yeah.
So,
hey, give our best
Coach,
to Kip.
Thanks so much. Yeah,
I will.
Kip a big hug for us, and and the whole family.
Hey, we're going to see you soon.
We'll see you up there this winter for a few games.
If you get up while it's still warm, we'll go play golf.
I'm in the state. Right. I'm in the state young men's presidency now, Skyler. So I see him all the time.
Oh, he told me that yesterday. I didn't even know.
Yeah, I got released from the bishopric up on campus and moved down, and now I get to see Skyler.
We're running things pretty loose up here.
He did. Skyler told me that. Skyler was with us this last week on business stuff, and so he stayed with us. And he told me, I'm in the young men's presidency with Wayne.
Yeah.
I said, really?
Like the fact that they even give Dave and I jobs just shows you how irresponsible the church is in Utah right now. So.
That's right. You want to move into this stake. That's what if you ever come back someday, you want to get in this stake where you've lived before. But thanks again. We'll talk to you soon. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll be on the app. Check out the team, and then we'll be back to talk about it.
Hey, thanks, guys. Good being with you.
The great Steve Cleveland, former head coach at BYU and Fresno State, and one of our good friends for a long, long time. Not many people leave BYU on their own to go do something else that will be better for them. If they leave BYU, usually they got bounced. Not here. Not here. He's like, you know what? He had the guts to take the job, and they also had the guts to take the Fresno State job.
And they needed
because it was what was best for him moving forward, and that opened the door for Dave Rose.
Fresno State needed him bad, and he felt a commitment to that community. They had some bad things going on. He took it over and helped straighten it around.
Had to clean up after Jerry Tarkanian. And then there's Dave Rose, which opens the door for Mark Pope, and here we go tomorrow night.
Dave Rose comes to BYU because of Steve Cleveland. And then that legacy goes on. And Dave's did a phenomenal job there.
We had some great interviews tonight. Let's run over a couple of things real quick. We'll take care of some housekeeping. We've got a nice quote from Lavelle, which is fitting heading into Friday night's game. Let's start with our football picks.
Yeah, I got to do picks.
We both went 5-0 last week, so
of course we did.
The scores stay the same, but we've got some interesting battles this week.
Yeah, so
Utah, Washington State Thursday night.
I'm going to pick Utah because I think Washington State's not that tough, but I know who you're picking on that one.
I'm going with Washington State.
Because you always don't go with Utah.
It's Thursday night. It's up there. It's going to be cold.
If it's cold and rainy, that could make a difference because they thrive on that stuff up there. Their fans love it.
Yeah, I think
there's something wrong with them.
The Cougars win on Thursday, and then the other Cougars win on Friday.
Right.
Okay.
So Notre Dame at Syracuse.
I'm going Syracuse on that.
Yeah, Roger, it's a doctor and I.
They got jobbed out of that game at Clemson the other night. So are you going Syracuse?
I'm going Syracuse as well,
Notre Dame's not any good.
Oh, Ohio State's going to beat Penn State in Happy Valley.
At some point, Ohio State has to have some competition. How about Oklahoma State at Kansas State?
I'm going Oklahoma State.
Yeah. Kentucky at Tennessee. Now, keep in mind, Tennessee plays Georgia the following week.
Doesn't matter to me. Tennessee's rolling. Best offense in the country. Just keep it rolling, Tennessee.
If that was it, I'm going Tennessee. But
Something
if that was at
right
Kentucky,
about
I'd do
college
that.
football now that Tennessee is back in power.
Yeah, that's a special place when it's full.
Yep.
Pre-Big 12 showdown, Cincinnati at UCF, not USF.
Yeah.
UCF.
UCF is reeling after East Carolina just beat them, and I'm gonna say Cincinnati's the big brother. They're gonna win it, Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm gonna go Cincinnati there too.
So our only different pick is you're picking Washington State and I'm picking Utah.
But we've got some big ones coming up, like Tennessee, Georgia.
Yep, those are big.
Those are some.
Okay.
So yeah, Cougars in the NFL this week.
Yep, Brady Christensen with the Panthers at the Falcons. Tyler Algier. So Cougs on both sides of that one.
Algier scored his first NFL touchdown over the weekend.
That's
nice
right.
job. Jamal Williams and the Lions are home against the Dolphins.
That's right. Taysom Hill and Danny Sorensen of the Saints are home against the Raiders.
All Taysom does is score touchdowns.
All Zach does is win.
He's 5-2.
That's
what?
all he does is win.
Things are going to get tougher,
No,
though.
he's 5-0. The Jets are 5-2. Zach Wilson is 5-0.
Things are going to get tougher now. Schedule turns for the Jets, and they're all banged up.
They're so good on defense, though.
Dax Milne and the Commanders are at the Colts.
And Dax has had an emerging role, not just returning kicks. He's catching the ball. It's pretty fun. So how about Fred Warner and his 49ers are at the Rams this week?
That's going to be a tough game. The Rams are coming off the bye week.
Yeah,
Monday Night Football, Sione Takitaki and the Browns hosting the Bengals.
Yep. And Brendan are thinking that we're going to be in Miami, and Sione's and the Browns are going to be down there playing the Dolphins in a couple weeks. We're going to check. We're going to get a hold of Sione and see if we can go support him there.
On this day in history, a couple of interesting things. Speaking of the Browns.
Yeah, quarterback Otto Graham set the club record with 4 fumbles. That's something. I mean, you remember the name Otto Graham?
Congratulations, Otto.
One of the all-time greats.
First electronic wristwatch goes on sale in New York City in 1960 on this day.
Everything happens in New York City at first. 1964, the Rolling Stones debut on the Ed Sullivan Show.
How about that?
So a year after I was born.
I don't know what song they sang, but I bet you it was awesome.
Yeah.
And how about this? Today, October 25th, 1978, Halloween was released in theaters starring Jamie Lee Curtis. Now there's another Halloween out right now, and I think it's called The Last Chapter, like 6 or 7, but it came out today, the original, and that freaked out a lot of people.
So 1978. How old is Jamie Lee Curtis? That makes me feel old.
Well, yeah, because she was young.
She's got to be old.
Young,
Okay.
Birthdays.
October 25th, birthdays. One of my favorites, Pablo Picasso, 1981.
Yeah, I think that's 1881. I think that's a typo on me.
You're right.
Picasso came around. That's my bad.
Yep.
Liddell Anderson, former BYU and Utah State basketball coach, born on this day in 1921.
Loved Liddell. He was so good to me. So 1921. 1940, Bobby Knight.
So night of coaches. We had Coach
Indiana.
Cleve on, these two coaches. 1941, Helen Reddy, I Am Woman.
Yeah, Helen Reddy. She could sing it. And 1984, Katy Perry. A number of songs we could go to there.
One death notable to talk about today, Payne Stewart, 1999. Remember that?
Was that
it was a plane crash, and
like
everyone on board
they
had
all passed out, and it was on autopilot just going.
And I remember on the news watching the plane in the sky.
So bad.
And
Payne Stewart was like a fun, flamboyant, always wore like the knickers, golf pants.
So that was today, back in 1999.
Wow.
Now, our quote for Lavelle as we say goodnight for another week. Actually, then we'll see you tomorrow on BYU TV app, and then we'll see you Friday on BYU TV.
Yep.
We're not going anywhere.
We'll be around this week.
We've heard this one before, but considering the football team's adversity it's dealing with, we felt it was perfect to bring back tonight. This is what Lavelle Edwards said about adversity.
He said, when we have adversity, we oftentimes tend to look around and think that we're the Lone Ranger. We tend to believe that we're the only one who has problems, and we always look around and see others who are more talented, taller, smarter, handsomer, or faster. I can assure you everyone has problems, even football coaches. The ability we have to handle this adversity will determine the degree of success that we will have in life.
Well, they're dealing with adversity.
Yep.
And we're curious to see how they handle it on Friday night.
Let's get a win this week. That'll make our shows a lot more fun next week.
Yeah, and then we can play Caleb Chapman's Rise and Shout on
That's
the
right.
saxophone.
Can't play it until they win again.
So maybe we can get that done. Max Hall and Alema Harrington join us next week. The podcast will be up tomorrow. Thank you for spending some time with us. Again, go to YouTube and subscribe. Get your friends to do it too. You can do it at Twitch as well. Help us grow this show. And we're going to grow old together. Because right now we're not necessarily old. We're old, but we're not necessarily old. But when we're done with this show, we'll be really old.
Yeah, because we'll be doing this a long time.
Yeah. For Blaine Fowler, I'm Dave McCann. We're the Wise Guys. Thank you. Have a great week. We'll see you tomorrow night from the Marriott Center, 9 Eastern, 7 Mountain on the BYU TV app for our first look at the new basketball team.
And we'll see you Friday night for the game day, 4 o'clock.
See ya.
See ya.